And then Tom Tillis dealing with a COVID diagnosis and recovery shortly after the Amy Coney Barrett news conference at the White House to announce her candidacy for the U.S. Supreme Court. A lot to unpack with this as well. They vary greatly on key issues as well, and we're going to have to see how these voters decide this race. Of course, Senator Tillis seeking a second term in the U.S. Senate.
All right, so next we're going to move on to the U.S. Congress District 6 race, and this pits Kathy Manning against Lee Haywood. You'll recognize Kathy Manning. She ran against Tom Tillis in that Senate race all those years ago. Now, this whole District 6 story is interesting for the pure fact that both of these are newcomers to this seat. There's not an incumbent. The incumbent, Mark Walker, the Republican, he said he wasn't going to run again this year because the district was sectioned off in such a way that it leaned towards the Democrats, and he said there's just no way for me to win this seat. So Kathy Manning and Lee Haywood. Kathy Manning branding herself as a mom, an attorney, a community leader, holding positions with the United Way and Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro. She's pushing for economic development in Greensboro, wants health care expansion and lower drug prices. And then you've got Lee Haywood, the Republican challenger, considering himself a blue-collar entrepreneur, supporting small business, leader of conservatives for Guilford County, and served as chairman of the 6th Congressional District for the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, we'll have to closely watch this race. Of course, the polls and analysts say this largely does favor Democrats with the redrawing of those districts, as well as District 2, two districts that could be important in the congressional makeup of the U.S. House. We also have the Winston-Salem mayor's race we are staying on top of, as we told you. Of course, incumbent Mayor Alan Joy is the Democrat, seeking his 6th term. He is campaigning on his ability to add jobs in Winston-Salem, and of course, the Business 40 Improvement Project, which got done, some say in record time. He boasts that the city has invested $2 billion in downtown revitalization, reduced chronic homelessness by 85%. He's running against the Republican Chris McCann. He supports school choice and is a staunch supporter of Second Amendment rights. He was one of the big voices in changing the name of the Dixie Classic Fair, opposing that name. He said the city was not listening to the community's voice in ultimately deciding to change the name to the Carolina Classic Fair. He supports businesses reopening amid COVID-19 and wants the city's budget edited to give small businesses more money so they can continue staying open.
All right, let's take a look at the North Carolina Attorney General race. And what you're seeing there is incumbent Josh Stein, the Democrat, going against Jim O'Neill, the Republican. So Josh Stein, I was just taking a look at the precincts reporting right now. There's only about 5% of precincts reporting at this point. Josh Stein at this point is leading 55% to 45%, but again, only 5% of the precincts are being reported. Incumbent Josh Stein pushing for the statewide sexual assault kit tracking system, helping survivors track their kits after finding that huge backlog in those untested kits. Secured $4 million to clear that backlog. Then, of course, you have Jim O'Neill, who you'll probably recognize his name and his face because he's right in our own backyard. He is from Forsyth County. This is his 3rd term as the Forsyth County District Attorney. He launched prosecution programs against sexual offenders and started an opioid addiction program, helping inmates detox and stay clean.
And then we also are staying on top of the lieutenant governor's race, which you've probably seen the ads for. This getting a lot of attention as of late. We have Greensboro native, the Republican in this race, Mark Robinson. He was born and raised here in Greensboro. You'll remember he gained attention for that video that went viral across the country from the city council meeting when he made that speech opposing the idea that was posed by the city council to cancel the gun show in light of the Parkland High School deadly shooting. He served in the Army Reserves as a medical specialist, grew up the 9th of 10 children, said he is experienced in being impoverished and knows what it's like to overcome that, as well as other adversity in his life. He's a staunch pro-life supporter, as well as the Second Amendment. He wants school choice as well, and he is facing Representative Yvonne Hawley. She's currently in the North Carolina House District 38. She's finishing up her 4th term. She wants gun control legislation. So the stark difference between these two candidates. She also wants to protect abortion care, according to her website. She has expertise in environmental work. She worked for the North Carolina Department of Administration, contracting for the DEQ. So you can expect her to push environmental regulations and such if she were to get elected to this office. But Tanya, I think it's going to be interesting to see if the lieutenant governor, the winner of this race, splits the party with the winner of the governor's race, because that is what happened 4 years ago, and the two of them have butted heads ever since on key issues, as they continue to do tonight.
Yes, absolutely. All right, what we're going to do now that we've given you kind of the overview of the races that we're going to be looking at, we're going to now take a really close-up view of what's happening right in our own backyard. So we're going to head to Rockingham County. That's where Itanise McMiller is, and Rockingham County had some issues this week.
Well, precinct officials have been making their way down here to the Rockingham County Board of Elections office to drop off ballots from their 15 different polling sites. I actually spoke to the Board of Elections director. She says they've also just gotten a huge batch of mail-in ballots, so they're going to be counting those as well. And they say that a lot of people here in Rockingham County have participated in early voting or mailed in their ballots. They say about 60% of registered voters cast their ballots that way. They say that's a huge number compared to other years. They say typically they only see about 30% of folks voting early, so it's a huge jump this year, and that is why they've only seen about 7,000 people vote in person this year. We are waiting to get those results. The director says that those results will actually be uploaded onto the state's Board of Elections website. We're going to actually go inside and see what update we can get from them in just a moment. We'll bring you those details later on tonight.
All right, thank you, Itanise. We also want to check in on Guilford County. We know that there was at least one precinct that had some problems this morning, and that caused some delays in the polls closing tonight here in our county, and ultimately the absentee ballots, a bit of a delay in those getting tabulated and pushed out. So Adore Achumba is staying on top of the situation in Guilford County, covering everything from the bond referendum to other key issues affecting voters. But Adore, you've been to certain polling places throughout the day. What have you noticed? Was there a big turnout on Election Day?
I am live here at the Guilford County Board of Elections Receiving Center. This is where all the precinct officers will deliver those ballots. Right now, the polling units across the state of North Carolina have closed. Here in Guilford County, that last center closed at 8:05, the Blueford Academy precinct, that had to be extended for about 34 minutes because of delays this morning. Now, let me walk you through what's happening here right now. This is the garage under the Guilford County building where the Board of Elections office is. And as you can see, the precinct judges are driving up to these stations here, and they are delivering their materials. It's getting really busy here. So they're delivering the voting materials that are sealed and protected in those bags there. And these ballots are going to then be transferred into the building where you have the actual collation process that will be happening. Now again, you see the physical ballots will be moved in, but of course, you know, all of this stuff is done through data on computers. So that device is going to also be delivered to the collation officers inside. Now you can see the precinct judges here delivering off, and then you have your poll workers also tallying and documenting the process of receiving the materials. Now, I spoke with Charlie Collicutt here of the Guilford County Board of Elections, and he told me that they had a little modification this year because of COVID-19. First of all, the stations, they have two stations now. Instead of just having one drive up, they have two drive up lanes where the drivers are coming through. They also have decided to bring all of the precinct judges to this one location. In the past, it was divided up between Greensboro and High Point, but this year, everybody in the county is delivering their election material directly to the Board of Elections here at this center down here in Greensboro. Again, it's starting to get very, very busy here, so This process is going to be going on for the next few hours. Once all these materials are taken in, the collation process will start. Again, the results will now start to be released as the data is tallied together. 8:15 was the last polling unit, the time that the last polling unit in North Carolina closed, and that officially gives a signal for results to start being released. But again, that process is going to trickle throughout the night as these precinct judges deliver and drop off the election materials for the certification and the collation, and then on to the certification process. Again, we are going to be here all night as we walk through this process, and we'll bring you the updated results as they come through, and also update you on what is happening here throughout the evening.
Yeah, and it goes without saying, we certainly thank all of our poll workers and our county boards of election that are going to be working through the night, potentially in the days ahead, to make sure all the votes that are eligible do count in this election.
And right now we've got about 12% of the precincts reporting, according to the North Carolina State Board of Elections. As this continues to go on, we'll get a better picture. Right now, it seems like all the races are like 50-40, something. So there's not really any like real numbers to report yet at this point, but that's going to be coming shortly.
And keep in mind, we also have to look at how these individual states are counting ballots. North Carolina has said from the get-go that they have already been counting the absentee ballots, and they were ready to push a button and send out the results tonight.
Versus other places that have to physically open every single ballot and then put it in there.
Like Pennsylvania, which could ultimately be the holdout in the presidential race in the days ahead. They were not allowed to even open those ballots until today. But I believe Ben Briscoe is taking an early look at some of these results coming in from the State Board of Elections. Ben, what kinds of trends are you seeing so far?
We start digging into the numbers we have, is that these are mainly early voting and absentee ballot numbers that have been counted so far. All the polling seems to indicate that that is majority Democrats. So when you're looking at these numbers, expect the Democrats to be ahead right now. The question is, by how much? Will it be enough to hold off when all those Republican votes from today start trickling in? Let's look first at the governor's race. We've got Roy Cooper right now with 55% of the vote compared to 43% of Dan Forrest. I want you to note, though, that is 53% of all voters they are expecting. So the question is the other 47% of the voters we're expecting Republicans? Will that outdo where it stands right now? We also have, for the Senate race, take a look. Cal Cunningham is up right now by more than 200,000 votes in our state at 51% to about 45% for Tom Tillis. That is higher than the polling had said originally. So again, we know that probably indicates that not all the parties are aligning yet, and that one party probably voted more today. The question is, again, by how much? Looking at some more local races here in Guilford County, our schools, they're saying they really badly need the money to build new buildings. Well, what did voters think? This one right now, again, off early voting numbers, shows that people who were for the sales bond, we've got the sales bond right here, yes, 72%. Only 27% of people so far voting against that bond, which is going to give us the money to build those new buildings. But how do we pay for it? That was the other part of this that was on there. Take a look on the sales tax referendum. That was that quarter-of-a-penny sales tax increase. 66% of people are saying, no, we don't want that. So it will be interesting to see if that falls along party lines and what happens throughout the night. From what I've heard from the experts, that one's not really a partisan issue. It's a little more general than that. We also have one more race here. I want to show you Kathy Manning is ahead 64%. Now this one is a race that we are not expecting to change that much. That is because our state legislature had to redraw the lines for that district, making it lean more towards the Democrat after a federal judge pushed them, saying that across North Carolina, the old map leaned too far Republican. So this is one of the districts they changed a little bit, and we are expecting the Democrat to hold their lead there. We're not calling the race yet, just telling you what we're expecting after talking to all of the experts. Guys, I'm going to keep digging into all the numbers, but I know that you have some more information over there that we need to get to.
All right, thanks so much, Ben. Throughout the night, we have two experts giving us context. And so we've got Winston-Salem State University's Dr. Denise Nation and UNCG's Dr. Tom Little. Thanks, guys, for being here. We appreciate you giving us the context of what's happening and kind of explaining some of those numbers.
Yeah, so Dr. Nation, let's start with you. Let's talk about the demographic of voters who turned out today versus who voted early. We are looking at the absentee results right now from the State Board of Elections, and it looks like Democrats, as expected, cast more early votes than Republicans did. And President Donald Trump and his campaign were hoping for an election day surge, a red wave, as they called it. Is that going to happen based on what we're seeing so far?
I'm not sure. Yeah, so we only have 20% in. So I'm not sure, but it could happen because they are, they really did a good job of trying to get the vote out, to get their supporters out. So we'll have to wait and see. So the absentee and early votes, the Democratic lead doesn't seem to be as substantial as we first thought it was be. I mean, people are enthusiastic, but it could be that you had more Trump supporters going out today because we can see that they actually kind of caught up in the early voting and absentee ballots. So we'll see how it turns out. That's why we're here all night, because
yes,
we don't know, right?
Yeah, of course, it is very, very early. Dr. Little, you've been watching these results come in as well. What do you make of the results so far? We did expect initially North Carolina to look blue because of the way our state counts the ballots, and they had these absentees ready to go. They've been counting them at county board meetings throughout the past few weeks and had them ready to push out. Of course, that could change. North Carolina went Republican in 2016 for president, but elected a Democratic governor. Do you expect North Carolina to split the ticket again?
I don't know about split the ticket with national, because that's too close to call. But I think looking at the early numbers, I would be comfortable saying that Cooper's going to win because he's up almost, 13%, something like that, even though it's early. And I know they said that the early voting has been reported, but I'm looking at it, and it's about 3.5 million votes have been counted in the governor's race. And the early voting plus the absentee was about 46 or 4.6 million. I said 3.5 million has been counted, and about 4.6 million was cast. So not all of them are in yet in terms of the early vote. So, right now, Biden is also up by, I think, 7 or 8. We'll just have to see if that holds. As Denise said, we just don't know. Trump, I think his administration did a really good job of trying to get their folks out. And it appears to have worked. At least if you look at Florida, I think Trump is doing considerably better in Florida than most of the prognosticators thought he would. And we may see that here.
Well, talking about Florida, as we had mentioned earlier, we knew that Florida was going to be close, and we noticed that Biden didn't even go to Florida for the last week or so. Didn't he send Obama down there? So maybe they, saw something in their numbers that probably Florida, would lean more towards the Republican.
I was looking at the polls. The 538 had it about 2.5% towards Biden, and even the latter polls were 1 or 2%. So again, I think you're right, Denise. They saw something that the pollsters didn't.
Right, and
hey,
so
Tom,
we are looking.
So we were saying the same thing earlier when I said, sometimes voters are not really telling you the truth. So you have to take that into consideration. And the margin of errors, the margin of errors on some of these polls were like +4, +3, so it could swing either way.
6, 7 point swing.
Yeah.
And so what we're really watching is that Florida, the Georgia, the Arizona, the Indiana, the Ohio, and of course, North Carolina.
Not Indiana. Indiana's long
Indiana
gone.
has been called. They already called
Yeah.
Indiana for Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm showing Illinois, but not Indiana on this one. Okay, great. to
Yeah,
know.
Indiana, Illinois. Illinois will go Democratic. Indiana will go Republican. We knew that before they started voting.
Yeah, I think Florida, obviously, and Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania could be the holdup for the next several days. They did not start even opening those absentee ballots until today. Do you think, as these candidates have clearly indicated Pennsylvania is important, do you think Pennsylvania could be the deciding factor here, Dr. Little?
Again, unless Georgia, if Georgia, North Carolina, or Arizona, or two of those three go to Biden, then Pennsylvania becomes much less important. If Trump sweeps through the South and through the Sun Belt states, then Pennsylvania becomes the critical state, I think, for both candidates. But if Biden can win Arizona and North Carolina and Georgia, then I think Pennsylvania becomes less important.
And let's not forget about Ohio, people.
That's right. Ohio's staying close, but I think it was mostly Calhoun County.
Ohio, you know?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Biden is looking good in Ohio. When you look at these counties around Ohio, Cuyahoga, look at what he's doing in Lucas County, look at what he's doing in Delaware County. So Ohio is in play.
Yeah. I mean, right now he's up, but I think it's mostly around Cuyahoga County. I haven't seen any. You go down the southern part of the state, down Columbus and south of there, it's pretty heavily Republican. I think you got to wait and see when those numbers come in.
Yeah, but I do think Ohio is in play tonight.
All right, we'll be checking back in with you throughout the evening. We appreciate you giving us the context on all of that. We do want to take a look at some 2016 numbers when it comes to voter turnout to then kind of see how it maybe transitions to what may happen today. So nearly 69% of registered voters cast their ballots in that election. That's over 4.7 million voters out of the 6.9 million registered voters at that time. And according to the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement, early votes cast by young voters exceeded the 2016 margin of victory in North Carolina, Florida, Maine, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Michigan.
Yeah, an unprecedented almost number of youth voters voting, more than 5 million young people ages 18 to 29, according to the Center for Information Research on Civic Learning and Engagement, had already voted earlier absentee in the 2020 elections, including more than 3 million in 14 key states. That is substantial. There's clearly this grassroots movement to go get out and vote, especially among young voters. The question is, did these presidential candidates resonate with that demographic, that age group? We will have to see.
We did a poll about who is most stressed about the elections, and actually millennials were the ones who scored the highest on that between Gen X and baby boomers.
Yeah, I heard you talking about that on 2 Wants to Know today and why that might be. What were some of the feedback points that your experts gave?
Just for the pure fact that they haven't been through this before, and they feel that so much is riding on it, and they've never had that ebb and flow of, okay, maybe this time it's not your candidate, but next time it will be your candidate, that kind of thing, that they just feel like this is the election.
Yeah. And historically, you might think youth vote, tie them to Democrats, but not necessarily. We have seen a large resurgence in young voters who have been very vocal about supporting the president, who have been very vocal about supporting the other Republican candidates. So it's going to be very interesting to see just how much of an influence this youth vote does have in the overall outcome of not only the presidential election, but also our key state and federal races as well.
All right, so we have breaking news right now in Danville that we want to send you to. Okay, so So what we're looking at right now is breaking news out of Danville. The casino referendum has passed. And what they're saying is that it could bring nearly 7,000 jobs to that Danville, Virginia area. The city council had voted unanimously passing a resolution. And then now it could bring in over $1 billion, they're saying, spending into the local economy for the next 10 years. So again, the Danville casino referendum has passed. The casino, they say, would create around $20 million in tax revenue per year. And there's a certain location where that casino is going to be.
Yeah, the former Dan River Mills Industrial Complex there. The city has negotiated a deal with Caesars Entertainment if approved by voters. So obviously that will be the case in the coming days. That's something that they're going to start on, getting the nitty-gritty of this casino. The project scheduled for completion in 2023 as of how it's laid out now. And a key point to note here, the average salary for those 7,000 employees who could be working there is about $46,000 a year. So this is huge for the city of Danville's economy, and clearly voters thought the same thing.
All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look, because we were talking about voter turnout. We wanted to make sure that we got that breaking news in there since it just happened. But we are going to take a closer look at voter turnout, and could it produce the highest voter turnout ever in our nation's history? All right, so Megan, you are looking at the AP map. We've got our computers up here, and so we're trying to juggle a whole bunch of different sources so that we can bring you the latest numbers.
Yeah, so this is the AP Electoral College map we're looking at. Hopefully we can pull it up on your screen for you momentarily, but bear with us here. The magic number is 270. That's the number of electors that a candidate needs to win the White House.
And we've already had a couple people on Facebook saying, explain that again, and because we have this conversation every 4 years, and we kind of forget about it because we don't have to use it, that you can win the popular vote but lose the election.
Yeah, and it happened most recently in 2016 where President Donald Trump lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton, but ultimately won the Electoral College. People could debate the merits of the Electoral College until they're blue or red in the face. It's rooted in the Constitution, and the idea is so that these largely populated cities or states like California, like Texas, like Florida, don't always decide the outcome of the election. It gives more voice to the less populated states.
Delaware, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire.
Yeah, and so North Carolina's 15 electoral votes will be key. We have 2 for U.S. Senate. We have 13 for our U.S. House of Representatives members. And so we'll have to see how this ends up. But again, 270 is that magic number we're going to be looking at. This is very, very early on. The AP has Biden up slightly, but again, we're seeing this change momentarily. And we have some updates here from our WFMY News 2 studio.
Fully taking shape. We'll check in with him in just a moment, but first let's get to the numbers.
Let's start with North Carolina and our governor's race. Let's look at the numbers right here. Incumbent Roy Cooper with 55% of the vote, Dan Forrest 44%. Right now, only about 35% precincts are reporting. Now to the U.S. Senate race. Tom Tillis, the incumbent, 46% of the vote. His challenger, Cal Cunningham, with 50% of the vote.
Among the local races in Guilford County, voters had to decide on a bond referendum for Guilford County schools and a quarter-cent sales tax increase. So far, 73% of voters said yes to that bond referendum. Looking at the early results from the sales tax increase, you can see 66% of voters are against the quarter-cent sales tax increase. All right, also moving on to the Danville, Virginia casino gaming referendum that voters in Danville were asked today. An overwhelming majority, 2/3, 69% of voters say yes to this. 17% of precincts are reporting, so there is some little bit there is more counting to go.
Okay, all night long we've been telling you that you should expect to see an early Joe Biden lead in our state, but Donald Trump will start to pick up throughout the night. We're starting to see that happen a little bit. I want to show you right now, Joe Biden is 52% in our state compared to Donald Trump's 47%. It is important to look at where the results are coming at. The reason for that disparity is because we had so many early voting, which tend to be more Democrat, that went largely to Joe Biden. But now that we're getting some precincts starting to report, the question is, are there enough Republicans to outpace those early voting numbers? At this point, we have 73% of the expected votes in. I want to show you, we're getting a lot of precincts from the rural areas that are redder, but areas like Greensboro, we only have 9% of precincts. So the cities are yet to report. We'll keep an eye on it for you.
Ben, thank you. On the state level, the race for governor is at the top of the list.
WFMY News 2's Kevin Kennedy is live now in Raleigh, where we expect to see Governor Cooper later on this evening. Kevin.
Yeah, we certainly should. We're at the North Carolina Democratic Party headquarters. Certainly it's a different election night than it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, there was a party, there was a celebration. Tonight, really no supporters out here at all, only members of the media. 4 years ago, the governor was actually the challenger. This time he goes in as the incumbent. 4 years ago, he won by a razor slim margin, about 0.02%, 10,000 votes out of about 4.5 million cast. This time he goes in with about a 9% lead, and as we just reported, he's up now by about 11%. His party, his campaign, very optimistic. They remain optimistic this evening. He is expected to be here at some point tonight. When he is here, when he does arrive, he will speak. We will bring that to you live. For now, though, we're live in downtown Raleigh. I'm Kevin Kennedy, WFMY News 2.
Kevin, thank you so much. Now let's go to the opponent's side. WFMY News 2's Maddie Gardner is live now in Selma, where Governor Cooper's challenger Dan Forest is holding a watch party. Maddie.
Yes, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest is trailing Governor Cooper in those very early polls. But as more precincts continue to report those numbers, more supporters are starting to roll into what the Dan Forest campaign is calling a victory party here in Selma. And really, the coronavirus has underscored his entire campaign, especially in the last 7 months, where he promises to reopen North Carolina, the economy, and schools if he is elected governor. But he's also focused on other issues like school choice and being the law and order candidate. Dan Forest is expected to be here tonight and speak to supporters once those results are finalized.
Maddie, thank you. Let's turn to Rockingham County now, where the Board of Elections has dealt with multiple challenges over the past month and a half.
WFMY News 2's Denise McMillan joins us live now with the latest.
Well, I just walked out of the Rockingham County Board of Elections office, and staff are hard at work counting ballots right now. They say they're still waiting on precinct officials to bring in some of their results. They're waiting on 3 different precinct officials from their 15 locations to bring in some of their ballots so they can get those official results in. But I'm told that 60% of voters here in the county actually voted by absentee or by mail. But we'll continue to bring you updates as they continue to count those ballots and bring you official numbers.
Denise, thank you. As results continue to come in, we are bringing them to you at the bottom. We'll see you again.
We're back with you with our election night coverage, and of course we're kind of doing most of everything here on digital, but we are taking a break here and there to pair up with our TV partners.
Yeah, and keep in mind these results are coming in. We're trying to be transparent with you that it is still very early.
Yes.
We're telling you that there are a certain number of precincts reporting a certain percentage point, but keep in mind whatever you see on our maps, red versus blue, that could still change as the hours go on, as more results get tabulated here in North Carolina and elsewhere in the country. But the State Board of Elections here in North Carolina did anticipate that 97% of the votes would be in and ready to be counted by tonight.
Right, and that's just taking some time as it's getting through all the machines. I mean, as of right now, we have about 33% of our precincts being reported. So we started getting those results in just a little after 8:15 or so.
Yeah, when some of those last late polls closed, some of the polling places that had some issues this morning and got extensions to close, we are seeing early Democratic leads in several of our key races. But let's put that in context. Keep in mind, North Carolina started counting absentee ballots before today. Of course, they couldn't publish the results until tonight, but they started counting them. And if you look at the percentage of voters who voted early, the majority were Democrats, whereas Republicans historically turn out on election day to vote. So you could see a shift from blue to red later in the night.
All right, so right now what we want to do is we're going to go to Forsyth County. Marissa Tanzino is there taking a look at the Winston-Salem mayoral race.
Well, we're here right outside the Forsyth County Board of Elections, and you can see that right behind me here, this is where the chief judges from each of the precincts are coming and dropping off all of their gear, their ballot boxes, the little media drive that has the vote counts on them. And you can see the process that's taking place. They don't even get out of their cars. They have employees, staff members with masks on that come and take things out of their trunk, take things out of the back seat. And in most cases, that's all that needs to be done. It's like it needs to be done. It's like a drive-through essentially. So you can see how much is going on here, and some of the staff members, they take the ballot boxes, they put them aside, and they take that little media USB drive is how I picture it, although I'm not sure exactly that's what it looks like, and they go inside and start tabulating, uploading the ballots that have already been tabulated at the precincts. So this is what this process looks like after the polls close. Now, I did just check the Board of Elections website just before coming on here, and it does not look like they have any precincts reporting from today just yet. However, it does look like there are the absentee and early voting numbers that are being counted on that website. So it's going to get a little bit noisy right now, so if you guys can still hear me, we're going to send things back to you while this train goes by.
All right, so we are going to move from the Forsyth County mayor's race. We've got Alan Joines there, who's the incumbent and has been there for many, many years with a new challenger this time around. Now we're going to concentrate on the U.S. House District 6, and this has a story behind it.
Oh, yeah, a very big story, of course, the congressional redistricting debate surrounding this congressional District 6. A three-court judge panel ruled that the district previously was gerrymandered in favor of Republicans, so they ordered that the legislature redraw the lines to be, in their minds, more fair to Democrats who are going to vote. So the incumbent, or who could have been the incumbent, Representative Mark Walker, decided not to run for a second term. So now we have Kathy Manning, who's running in the Democratic seat. Remember her from running against Ted Budd in Congressional District 13 4 years ago. She is running against Lee Haywood, who brands himself as a blue-collar entrepreneur. He's been very involved in local politics here for the Republican Party from the Greensboro-Summerfield area. So very interesting to see how this shakes out, but it is largely favored to Democrats.
All right, so we have Tahisha Boyes, who is following this U.S. District House Seat 6. Tahisha, what's going on where you are?
No countdown. Yes, hello everyone. Tahisha Moyes live outside the Guilford County Republican headquarters. As we take a look at some of the results that have come in already, Kathy Manning is in the lead. Now, she's the Democratic opponent in this District 6 race, Lee Haywood on the Republican side. Now, before this race started, Kathy Manning was slated heavily favored, I should say, to win this election because if you remember, District 6, those lines were redrawn to include Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and High Point, and those three cities lean heavily Democratic. Now, Kathy Manning, when I spoke with her earlier today, she said she was excited by voter turnout so far. She's held a number of virtual events to prepare for this race and getting the vote out that way. Tonight, she is holding a virtual event. Actually, as we speak, I was supposed to start at 9 o'clock, so that is how she will be addressing those who voted in favor of her. Now, on the opposite side, Lee Haywood choosing to do an in-person rally of sorts, an in-person watch party. We have a number of people inside the building watching around the table, waiting for those results to come in. Now, in terms of the issue, when I spoke with Kathy Manning earlier today, she says that she wants to get a hold of COVID-19 and eliminate the threat here in America. She says that if Joe Biden were to be elected, she would work with him and try to get a national mandate down or work on the national level to get things done. Lee Haywood says he wants to focus on contact tracing because he wants schools and businesses to reopen. He says that there is a way for them to do so safely and keep the most vulnerable inside. Now, apart from COVID-19, which has been a backdrop of this race, of course, other key issues near and dear to both of them. Immigration for Lee Haywood. He wants that southern border wall built. He wants the national debt reduced, and he also wants to take a stab at the Department of Education. Right now, it's at the federal level. He says that responsibility should go down to the state. Now, Kathy Manning, you know, she's been in the triad for many years. She's been involved in the nonprofit world at that as well, and an immigration lawyer. She says some of her key issues that she plans to back if she is elected is focusing on accessible and affordable health care, investing in schools and teachers, raising the minimum wage, and women's health, and also climate change. Now, earlier today, she said that she wants to work across the aisle if elected. That means with both her Democratic and Republican counterparts here. She also says that she is in favor of police reform. If you remember, in Greensboro earlier this summer, the Greensboro Police Department had changed their policy to not have hog tying anymore, and she says she was in favor of that. She's also in favor of police reform down at the federal level following the death of George Floyd. Now, again, she's been in the triad for 34 years. She also wants to invest in schools and jobs. She wants to keep jobs here local in the United States, here in the triad as well. And she says that she is going to work towards that if she is elected. Again, we are still awaiting Lee Haywood to make his way here to the Guilford County Republican headquarters. We'll hopefully speak with him here just shortly. I'm also going to check in on that virtual watch party on Kathy Manning's side to see how she is addressing her supporters, how she's feeling. We plan to have a FaceTime with her later this evening to get some of her thoughts out there to the public for those who are not able to keep an eye on that watch party. But we're going to wrap things up here live in Guilford County. Keep an eye on those results. But as it stands right now, again, this is still early voting. Those numbers that have come in, Kathy Manning is in the lead, but we will continue to monitor those results and send it back to you in the studio.
All right, thanks so much, Tahisha. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to give you another one of our tools, a really close-up look at one of our tools as we're looking at the AP election results, as well as we are looking at the North Carolina State Board of Elections. So, Megan, you've got all of that.
Yeah, Tanya, we're taking a close look here first at the AP electoral map. Keep in mind it is still very early. A number of states still have polls open, namely in the Midwest and the West Coast. So we have to always put this in context here. So this is early on. A lot of this is polling data, though. The states that the AP is calling for certain are the states that we expected to either go red or blue. They're not necessarily the battleground states. North Carolina, we know 77% of the vote is already in. And this AP map map, you can see here it's a light blue, which indicates that it's not yet called, but Democrats are leading. We know that to be true based on here the results in North Carolina. If we refresh, it looks like Joe Biden is up by about 3% of the vote so far. President Donald Trump, who won North Carolina in 2016, currently stands at 47%. But keep in mind, as we've been explaining to you this morning, North Carolina had the absentee ballots ready to go. We know historically and based on the outcome for the number of people who requested ballots and who voted early, that those early voting results tend to favor Democrats. So that could be why we are seeing this early indication of Democrats leading in North Carolina. And it could change as more precincts report, because only about 33% or 38% now from the State Board of Elections of the precincts, the polling places today, have reported. So again, we're going to be consistently watching this. Let's take a look at some of the other battlegrounds here. Pennsylvania, a very big deal. Both candidates campaigning very heavily in Pennsylvania all the way up until the last minute. It also shows light blue at this point. Pennsylvania has 20 electoral votes at stake. And it could be the holdup in the overall outcome of this election, because Pennsylvania, unlike North Carolina, did not start counting absentee ballots until today. In fact, their state law prevented them from even opening the envelopes until today for those absentee ballots. So this is quite a process. We're also looking at Wisconsin. We're looking at Michigan, both of which President Donald Trump won in 2016, both of which are leaning Republican at this point. I think we should bring in an expert here to kind of put this all in context and analyze this. We have Dr. Tom Little from UNCG. What do you make of these early results? And even Florida, which I did not mention here, now leaning red so far.
Well, I think Florida's huge, because that's 93% of the vote in. Trump is ahead by over 400,000 votes. I don't think Biden can overcome that. So I think I would go ahead and paint Florida red. The Wisconsin, Michigan numbers, way too early to make any judgment call there in terms of the percentage of vote in. But Florida, that's significant.
And looking here closer at our North Carolina counties and cities, pretty much as we expected. Greensboro, Raleigh, Charlotte looking blue. Some of our more rural counties looking red. Talk about the influence of the demographics of the city voters versus the county voters in this election, and how it could shape the overall outcome for North Carolina.
Well, I think you're absolutely right there. Urban voters, the big questions can be the suburban or ex-urban voters, those around the cities. We know that the inner cities are likely to go Democratic. We know that the rural counties and small towns and communities are likely to go Republican. The question is going to be those ever-present suburban voters, those fast-growing areas in the state, Cary, around Wake County, exurb areas around Mecklenburg County. You know, that's the big question. About almost 80% of the vote is in right now, but the question is, where do the rest of those votes come from? If they come from the urban areas or suburban areas, that's good news for Biden. If those are coming from those rural areas, that's good news for Trump. But we just don't know where they're coming from yet.
Yeah, and still too early to call North Carolina. I'm just refreshing the State Board of Elections website that says 44% of precincts are reporting. Overall here, it looks like for the Senate race, Cal Cunningham is up by about 3 percentage points. Lieutenant Colonel Cunningham, 49% of the votes based on those reported so far. Senator Tillis, the incumbent Republican, about 46% of the vote. This is the race I think a lot of people are really wondering how it's going to turn out. You could look back at 2016 and take a guess on how North Carolina might go for president and governor, but the Senate race still seems like a big toss-up, and of course it's important in the overall U.S. context of who controls the majority of the U.S. Senate. What are you anticipating the outcome will be here?
Again, it's kind of really, it just depends on where those votes are coming from. All of the polls consistently showed Cunningham with about a 3% margin of victory, which is where we're at right now. But again, that 44% of precincts in is rather misleading, because it doesn't take into account those early votes. It's only 44% of the precincts, but again, if you look, it's 4.5 million votes, and I think we're expecting to have about 5.9, so it's over close to 80% of the votes are in. So I would say right now that you give the benefit of the doubt to Cunningham, but again, we don't know where those remaining votes are coming from, and that's really going to be critical.
All right, Dr. Tom Little, thank you so much. You are going to hang out with us and continue providing context. But for now, let's send it back to Tanya Rivera. Tanya, you're taking a closer look at some of those battleground states that we've been mentioning and why they're so key in this election.
Yeah, and of course, North Carolina, one of those battleground states. The other states that we're talking about are Florida, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania as well. Both President Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden have, really centered the final stretches of their campaigns in those battleground states. All right, so let's take a look at why they are and what's up for grabs.
Welcome to Battleground Arizona. State 48 used to be a sure bet for Republicans, but times have changed. We've seen Arizona turn purple as more and more people have moved here from across the country. Now, President Trump won Arizona 4 years ago, but so far in this election, Joe Biden has had a slight lead in most polls. Still, the race remains very close heading into Election Day, and both campaigns have been out in full force, looking to win our 11 electoral votes.
Hi from Tampa. The Sunshine State is the ultimate swing state with votes almost always split right down the middle. There are a little more than 5 million registered Democrats, 5 million registered Republicans, and some 3.5 million independents who could ultimately decide who will walk away with the state's crucial 29 electoral votes. And get this, in the past 6 presidential elections, only Florida and Ohio have gone for the eventual winner every time, making this arguably the most important state in U.S. presidential elections.
Greetings from Atlanta, where the latest polls are showing Biden and Trump in a statistical dead heat. The race here can go either way. To give you some history, Republican presidential candidates have won Georgia in every election since 1992. Bill Clinton was the last Democrat to win here. In the 2016 election, Trump won Georgia's 16 electoral college votes by 5.7 percentage points. But that was then, and this is now, where there's been a huge shift away from the president, specifically in Atlanta's suburbs, changing politics and demographics, meaning Georgia could flip blue.
Hello from Minnesota, aka the Bold North. This year we are a bold battleground state. 10 electoral votes may not seem like a lot, but this year they carry a lot of weight. You think Minnesota, you think of snow, and you think Democrats. That's because our state has voted Democrat every year since 1976. But our political climate is as wild as our weather. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won by only 1.5 percentage points. And this time around, Republicans are pushing hard to flip the state. But they'll need to push harder as Biden is gaining in the polls.
Make no mistake about it, folks. Both Trump and Biden have Carolina on their mind, specifically North Carolina, where our 15 electoral votes can go either way. College sports fans think of us as Tar Heel blue, but politically, at least, we're pretty purple. At the presidential level, North Carolina has voted reliably red for decades now. But in 2008, Barack Obama took the state, and since then, we have been a key battleground. Some experts even calling us the bluest red state in the country.
Here in Ohio, we are not known simply as a swing state. We are the must-win state. No Republican has ever won the White House without winning Ohio. Ohio is like 7 states in one. Each part of the Buckeye State is so different. That's one reason that we can flip and flop each election year. We have 18 electoral votes up for grabs, and it's anyone's game.
Howdy from Dallas. The big question, will Texas go blue? If it does, that would be huge. This state has been solidly Republican for decades. We're talking bright red. No one would ever think of Texas as a swing state until now. Some polls say Texas is a toss-up, and if Biden flips the state, taking home 38 electoral votes, it would be a huge blow to President Trump.
All right, so we took a look at battleground states. Let's focus next to our state, our battleground state.
Yeah, we have our panel of experts here. So, Dr. Little, talk about the makeup of the North Carolina legislature and the seats that are open. Of course, we know the contentious race for the governor and lieutenant governor, splitting the ticket 4 years ago. Talk about how this whole thing will work if they split the ticket again for lieutenant governor and governor, and if Republicans or Democrats were to control the North Carolina legislature.
It's a great question. It's a huge issue. I would argue it's more important than the executive offices this year because of redistricting. In North Carolina, redistricting is done totally by the legislature. The governor cannot veto the districts. So if the Democrats could pick up a tie or a majority in one of the two chambers, they get a seat at that table. And that is huge. Now, let's say that it ties 25-25. Then if Mark Robinson wins as lieutenant governor, he'll be the president of the Senate. And he will cast the deciding vote, and Republicans will organize the Senate. So that's critical as well. But if the Democrats right now, they need 4 seats in the Senate to tie, they need 5 seats in the House. With the redistricting, I think they feel like there's at least 2 seats they're going to get in the Senate and 3 in the House. The question is, can they pick up those other 2 or 3 in each chamber? But again, given this is a redistricting year, which will set the districts for the next 10 years, that's huge.
And we were talking about electoral votes, and Megan was like, you know, for the size state that we are, population-wise, maybe we should be having a few more electoral votes.
Yeah, that is based on population. Literally what they do, and they'll do it at the beginning of next year based on the new census. They will take the total number of population in the United States, divide it by 435, and then allocate based on the number of people you have in your state. That's why the census is so critical, because that determines the number of seats that you get in Congress and the number of electoral votes, because that is equal to the number of members of Congress that you have. So we have 13 districts plus 2 senators. That equals the 15 electoral votes. So it's based on your population plus your 2 senators. So that's why the census is critical.
Yeah, and you've been emphasizing that, Tanya, for weeks now, given the census deadline. Dr. Nation, let's look at the demographics of the North Carolina voter. I know you have an expertise in studying how race, class, and gender influence politics. So talk about the influence of the woman vote, the black vote, the Latino vote on the outcomes here in North Carolina.
Okay, so we understand the importance of the black woman's vote. Okay, so black female voters have been very influential because they can be depended on. So they're consistent voters. They show up to the polls. We must also think about how the demographics of the state have shifted over the last decade or so with regards to Hispanic voters, and also people moving from up north, as we say, up north to here to North Carolina. And so these demographics have really impacted what the state looks like, more purple than red. And so so those are important factors.
All right, Dr. Little and Dr. Nation, thank you so much for your expertise. We'll be checking back in with you as the night goes on.
You know, I was looking at the voter turnout and thinking that there could be 5.9 million North Carolina voters turning out, knowing that there are about 7 million. I mean, that's almost unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, we saw an unprecedented number of early votes. In some states, the early vote exceeded the total vote cast in 2016. That's amazing. That clearly shows that there is this desire to vote, this energy heading into this election and this election night. And unfortunately, we might not know the outcomes in certain races tonight, namely the presidential race, because certain states are not tabulating votes as quickly as North Carolina is. So we'll be putting all of that in context tonight in telling you about these early preliminary results as they come in.
And of course, making sure that we kind of like, you know, figure that out with the other polls that are out there as well. All right, we're going to send it back to the studio for right now.
I'm Julie Luck alongside Chad Silber with the latest election results in North Carolina.
Let's start with one of the most watched races in our state, the U.S. Senate seat. Incumbent Senator Thom Tillis. If we take a look at the latest votes, you can see that he is losing by a very slim margin. 47% of the vote. Cal Cunningham, the Democrat, 49%. 54% of precincts are reporting in their locations.
Now to another race that we are all watching extremely closely. The governor's race. Incumbent Governor Roy Cooper has 53% of the vote. Republican challenger Dan Forest with 46%. Again, 53% of the precincts reporting.
Among all North Carolinians, people in Guilford County might take a special interest in the race for lieutenant governor. Republican candidate Mark Robinson is from Greensboro. You can see, boy, he is in a tight one right now with Yvonne Lewis Holly. 51% of the precincts reporting, and they each have 50% of the vote so far.
Ben Briscoe here with some in-depth look at the numbers so far. I do want you to know we are getting closer to answers. Right now we have 81% of the estimated vote in North Carolina in right now. It's important to look at where that is coming from. We are trying to see if there's enough Republicans to outpace Joe Biden's early lead in early voting. What is interesting is when you look at the areas where Donald Trump went the most in our state. Down in Lumberton, 90% of those precincts are in now, so he was really counting on that. That's in. Joe Biden's still leading. If you look at Fayetteville, 93% of that county's precincts are in. It's still leaning blue. He wasn't quite able yet to turn enough voters there. And up in Wake County, this is really interesting. You're expecting a lot of Democrats there. Only 5% of those precincts are in so far. If you look over in the Triad real quick, 21% of Guilford County and 15% of Forsyth County. So you've got some big cities still out. That could mean some more Democratic votes for Joe Biden are on the way.
Obviously still too early to make any kind of predictions here. Well, ballots are still coming in Guilford County.
WFMY News 2's Adoria Chumba is live at the Board of Elections office with a look at how they're processing ballots right now.
That's right. This is the garage here, but it's been turned into a receiving center for those returned ballots. Now you can see here, there are 2 lanes here. We're going to walk over here and kind of walk you through what is happening. The precinct officers are showing up here. There's 2 lanes for them, and they're meeting the staff that are collecting the items from them. They are turning in the ballots, the returned ballots that were used for the election, as well as the media stick and any of the materials that were used today, including election signs or leftover stationery. Now, again, this year, Guilford County is consolidating everybody into this one location. You can see the computers also. And this is going to be going on all evening. Right now we have about 35 of the 165 precincts reporting. So there's still a lot more precincts to return their ballots here this evening. And of course, they are trickling in, but we're going to be here all night getting those updates for you.
Adoria, thank you. Here we are, almost 9:30 at night, still a very active scene in Guilford County. Alamance County election officials are also sorting through their ballots. WFMY News 2's Grace Holland is live now at the Alamance County Board of Elections with more.
It's a little bit smaller of a procedure going on here at the Alamance County Board of Elections, but still very busy. If you look over my shoulder here, you can see some of those precinct judges lined up with their documents and their ballots, ready to head into the Board of Elections over the next few hours. And as time goes on throughout the evening, they've been pulling up here in the parking lot and taking those out. Earlier, it was taking them less time to get through, but now as more precincts are coming back, it is taking a little bit longer. We're seeing about 60% of the vote in here in Alamance County, so we're going to keep an eye on results as we continue through the night.
Grace, thank you so much. Stay with us throughout the night on air and online for the latest numbers. We're going to be back in about 30 minutes from now with more.
And we're also live streaming on WFMYnews2.com, Facebook, YouTube, and the News 2 app.
You can count on WFMY News 2. Your team coverage continues in about 30 minutes from now. Don't go anywhere.
All right, so we are back with you, and we have a new face for you. This is Leah Wilson, and she is our digital guru. And so you have been compiling what is going on trend-wise, what people are searching for.
Yes, yes. And you know, I love trends. You know why I love trends? Because I'm nosy. I want to know what people are looking for. I want to know what you guys are talking about. So we're going to take a look at our Google Trends, which...
They will eventually
They'll
pop
come up
here.
there.
Okay.
but what people are really searching for, they're looking for the next day. They want to know
Wednesday.
When is Tuesday going to be over? If that's what you're looking for, tell us in the chat. I want to know. Are you ready?
Do you
for today
think
to be
it
over?
happens to be, I want all the calls to stop, I want the texts to stop, I want the mailers to stop?
Absolutely. Do you know how many text messages I've gotten asking me to make sure I vote? Ask my friends to vote.
Right.
And then, you know, vote again if you can, I guess.
Okay.
But let's take a look at these Google Trends. So what we're looking at, this is what Americans are searching for, their key political issues, and what they want to know about each candidate and how they stand on the issue. So the number one across the country, including North Carolina, with the exception of 2 states, is unemployment. I mean, with COVID-19 and people being laid off, businesses being closed, people are losing their jobs, and they want to know, what is our next president going to do about unemployment? So that's what they're looking for. And then we have wages, of course. With unemployment comes, are we going to raise the minimum wage? Are we going to get more money for, you know, for the jobs that we're doing? And of course, health care, because it's a hot button topic. Are we going to change Obamacare? Each candidate has talked about changing that. So, you know, and then of course crime, and then race because of social unrest. And then the next thing we'll look at is, you know, it's just the trends are changing all the time. They're changing so quickly as to what you guys are clicking on and what you're looking at. This hour we looked at Google Trends. Next hour we're going to look at Twitter and social media and see what people are looking at there.
Okay, Wednesday though. That is
Wednesday.
What's trending is Wednesday. Is that trending for you at home? I wonder. When will it be Wednesday?
When is it over?
Because you kind of think that Wednesday means everything's going to be wrapped up, and you kind of hope that that is the case.
But that may not be the case. And another thing that people are searching is when the day of the week, Wednesday, #1 search.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, you know, another thing that people are searching is when are we going to get results? And the answer is we just don't know yet because, you know, we'll be counting until maybe the 12th.
Right. And so, you know, that is something from North Carolina where the absentee votes, you're allowed to count them as long as they're postmarked by November 3rd. As long as they get there by November the 12th, they get to be counted.
Yep. That's how it's working.
Okay. And so North Carolina is in the, you know, the easy part where our absentee ballots that have already come in, they've been tabulated, right?
Right.
But, you know, like states like Pennsylvania, they're literally opening up the envelopes right now.
Yes.
Doing all that. So that's all crazy.
It is all crazy.
All right, so we're going to hand things over to Megan Malaris. She's getting us updated on what's going on.
Yeah, we have an official update here from the Associated Press on Congressional District 6. They are projecting Kathy Manning, the Democrat, as the official winner with 63% of the vote, not even close to Republican challenger Lee Haywood's 36% of the vote. That is consistent with the State Board of Elections results, too. We know 81% of votes in North Carolina are in so far, even though only 33% of precincts are reporting. Both the AP and it looks like the unofficial results from the North Carolina Board of Elections do support Kathy Manning running away with District 6. Remember, this was the congressional district that was one of the 2 most affected by the 3-court judge ruling last year. It said that the North Carolina maps used in the 2016 election were gerrymandered in favor of Republicans. So it ordered the state legislature to redraw those districts. That's the reason why former incumbent Republican Mark Walker did not run again for a second term in Congressional District 6, clearing the way for Kathy Manning and Lee Haywood to run. You'll remember Kathy Manning from when she first ran against Ted Budd for Congressional District 13 4 years ago. She lost that race. But again, now that these districts are redrawn, she has a clear victory with 63% of the vote compared to Lee Haywood's 36%. Kathy Manning has touted herself as a mom, as a lawyer. She is very starkly different from Lee Haywood in what she had campaigned on, siding very closely with Democratic platforms, liberal platforms. So again, we can officially call, according to the Associated Press, Kathy Manning has won Congressional District 6. I'm sure we'll be checking in with our Tahisha Moyes as the evening goes on. She's monitoring these developments in this race. But Tanya, this was pretty much what we expected. It also looks like the AP is calling a couple of other congressional races. It looks like District 13, they have called it going to Representative Budd. It looks like District 11 for Cawthorn, and we will have a full update on this as the night continues. But again, the AP officially calling Congressional District 6.
All right, great. Thanks so much for that update. Again, the numbers, coming in throughout the entire night and changing very quickly. So we want to keep you up to date as soon as we get those in. Right now, we do want to send you over to Alamance County. That is where our Grace Holland is.
We've been watching over the last hour or so as precinct judges have been coming here to the Alamance County Board of Elections to drop off their ballot boxes and other election data. They've been coming into the parking lot here and then going straight through the door back there. I'm going to turn around just a second. You can see there are some people standing there. It doesn't appear to be right now a line of those precinct judges waiting to go in. We've seen that here and there throughout the evening as more and more of those precincts from across the county have started to come back. There's a little more than 30, between 30 and 40 precincts across all of Alamance County. I do want to go over a couple of races we're keeping an eye on right now. There's about 60% of the vote in Alamance County, and about 30% of precincts are in. Two races that I'm keeping an eye on are the race for the NC Senate District 24 race between Amy Galey, who is the Alamance County Commission Chair currently, and J.D. Wooten. Galey is the Republican, Wooten is the Democrat. Right now they are separated by less than 2 percentage points right now. That has increased a little bit in Galey's favor in the last few minutes. Another race I'm keeping an eye on is the NC House District 63 race. Right now, Democrat Ricky Hurtado has a narrow lead, and I mean narrow, less than a percentage point over Stephen Ross, who is the incumbent Republican who is in that seat. Otherwise, it seems that across most of the races, the incumbents seem to be winning here. That includes in the presidential race. The president is leading by a few percentage points here in Alamance County. Of course, we are still waiting for all of these results to continue to come in. You can see over here, Crosby, if you don't mind just kind of panning and showing, this precinct judge is putting some things back into her car. Looks like she is getting ready to leave and head home for the evening probably. There is some security here. A state patrolman has been out kind of keeping an eye on the situation as everything is going here. And, as I said, we're continuing to just watch as these precincts come through, and we'll continue to have updates throughout tonight.
Okay, so we are taking a look at the AP election results, and we do know that Kathy Manning has been called for North Carolina District 6. But it looks like there could be another call as well. So, Megan Malaris, let's bring that over to you so we can get a closer look at those numbers.
Yeah, so as we reported a few minutes ago, Kathy Manning, the Democrat, as expected, won Congressional District 6 for North Carolina in the U.S. House. But it looks like District 5 for the U.S. House, Congressional District 5, went to incumbent Representative Virginia Foxx with a clear victory over her challenger. She has 66% of the vote thus far. David Brown, the Democratic challenger, coming in at 31% of the vote. And it looks like a third-party candidate here has about 2% of the vote. But again, Congressional District 5 is clearly, as according to the AP, going to Representative Virginia Foxx. And if we look at the presidential results here, the results are still coming in very early in that race, but North Carolina seems to be leaning Democrat. As we saw before, this is still the case now, a couple of hours later. Keep in mind, North Carolina pushed out the results of its early votes pretty early on, the absentee votes, which leaned Democrat. that, as we saw with voter turnout, Republicans tended to vote day of, so this could change ever slightly. But the AP is projecting North Carolina could go to Joe Biden, with now 83% of the expected vote coming in. We are also looking very, very closely at Florida. The AP shows it is currently leaning toward Donald Trump, leading by 3 points there with 91% of the expected vote in. So say Donald Trump wins Florida, but say Joe Biden wins North Carolina. Florida has 29 electoral votes. North Carolina has 15 electoral votes. We're going to very closely be watching Pennsylvania with 20 electoral votes. Currently, very early in Pennsylvania, they had not even started tabulating early votes until tonight, but they carry 20 electoral votes. That's going to be very important in the overall outcome. It would also mean President Donald Trump needs to win Michigan and Wisconsin again, as he did in 2016. He's going to need to win Texas and some of these other key battleground states. But as of now, still too early to call. These ones that AP is calling were those that we did expect to go either red or blue, as they typically do. Missouri, very interestingly, though, typically goes red. It is looking like it is leaning toward Joe Biden here with only 18% of the votes. Keep in mind they're an hour behind us, so these Midwest and Western states are going to take a little bit longer for us to see how that all shakes out. But again, very interesting, Tanya, what is happening here with the Electoral College and the electoral votes. Ultimately, the road is to 270. That is what a candidate needs to win the White House. Currently, again, still early, the AP shows Joe Biden leading by a pretty clear victory. But this all could change as these results come in and as more states report. We'll keep an eye on it.
So much, Megan. I mean, even when you took a look at it, such a slim margin that President Trump won North Carolina in 2016 by 3.6%. So we can only read so much into it at this point in time. Is that right, Dr. Nation?
Yeah. So it is. It's pretty early. So we have to, wait to see, the numbers, what the numbers looks like. In an hour. I think in an hour we'll have a better view of what's going on. By midnight or so, we should know something really close to what is going to be the final resuls.
I know.
But right now it's really early. There's some polls that haven't even been closed as yet, so that's important.
Mm-hmm. What do you think that we all need to be looking at, paying attention to right now?
Is that for me or Tom?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, what we should be looking for?
Yeah, what has piqued your interest so far?
Okay, so I've looked at some of these Senate race. So those are important. Colorado, for instance. I think that's something interesting going on there. The figures coming in from Wisconsin are still pretty early. I think Michigan is an important state that we should also be looking at based on what's coming in right now. The Kansas Senate race, that's important because the Democrats need four seats to take control of the Senate, so that is important. So these are some of the big things that's coming in that I think we should be looking at. The numbers, we should be looking at these particular states. The battleground states are the states that I think are important because those are the states gonna really decide who becomes the next president of the United States.
And Dr. Little, I saw you nodding your head in agreement there.
Yeah, I think that Denise is absolutely right. The state she's talking about, Michigan, Wisconsin. I think what's interesting in North Carolina is where those remaining votes come from. If Ben is correct, he said earlier that only 5% of the precincts in Wake County had reported. If that's accurate, that's a really good sign for Joe Biden. If he's on top and only 5% of Wake had reported. That's what I'm looking for, is to see where those other 17% are in North Carolina. Because if North Carolina goes for Biden, it's not Florida, but it makes Trump's job a lot harder. and particularly if Arizona were to go as well, that would be, I think, 25 electoral votes, which is almost as much as Florida, and would be really important.
Now, I know you both mentioned the U.S. Senate. Of course, North Carolina, a key factor in that, ultimately could determine the entire majority in the United States Senate. Democrats need to net 3 seats if Vice President Biden becomes president. They need to net 4 if President Trump gets reelected. But North Carolina is not the only state to watch in the race for the United States Senate. Dr. Little, we have a number of states, South Carolina, Alabama, Arizona, to look at as well. A very tight race in South Carolina, at least from a fundraising perspective, between Senator Graham and Jamie Harrison. What do you expect as far as the overall makeup of the Senate after tonight?
I would be surprised if it's not, it may be 50-50, or it may be 50-48, and we'll have to wait on Georgia, because both the seats in Georgia have to get above 50%. I'm sorry, one of the seats in Georgia has to get above 50%, the special election race. I think both do. I'd have to check. Maybe both have to be above 50%. So it may be 50-48, because Alabama will go Republican. Jones is going to, I think, lose that seat. So as you said, Dems need to pick up 4. I think Colorado has already been called for Hickenlooper. Maine is still tight. I suspect Arizona will go to Kelly. So that's 2 of the seats. And then it comes down to North Carolina. South Carolina, I think it's going to be an interesting race, but my guess is that Lindsey Graham holds on there.
Yeah, you mentioned Georgia, the special election happening there to replace retiring Senator Johnny Isakson. It's probably unlikely that a candidate in that particular race will get the required 50% of the vote. So that runoff, Dr. Nation, could ultimately hold up the Senate results for days to come.
Yeah, definitely. But we're seeing that they're still waiting on returns from a lot of those more diverse state counties and cities in Georgia. So they're still waiting for returns from the Atlanta region. So it's going to be interesting. But as Tom said, I don't know about someone getting 50% or more. There may be a runoff and a holdup. But I have you guys look at that Kansas race. So that is actually interesting to me. So that is as interesting as how closely the Purdue's getting run in Georgia as well. So yeah.
All right, so we'll be taking a closer look at that as we go throughout the night. Thank you for calling our attention to that. We'll be checking back in with Dr. Nation and Dr. Little in just a little bit. What we do want to do is go out to Maddie Gardner. She is covering Dan Forest, the lieutenant governor right now, but hoping to be the next governor.
Hey, good evening. WFMY News 2's Maddie Gardner live in Selma, North Carolina, just east of Raleigh and Johnston County, where Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest is holding what he's calling a victory party here just off Interstate 95. We have seen a steady stream of supporters coming in and out of the building behind me. They are allowed to come inside. We are standing outside as of now, waiting to hear if Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest will speak tonight. We're told he will speak to supporters once those results are finalized. And taking a look at the very latest results in the race for governor in North Carolina, right now 70% of precincts are reporting. They show 52% of the vote now going to Governor Roy Cooper, with 45% of the vote going to Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest. So Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest still trailing behind in those polls. It is still early on, now 70% of precincts reporting. But when you take a look at these two candidates, Governor Cooper and Dan Forest, very different, not only in their platform, but in their campaigning for the last few months. Dan Forest has been holding in-person events, while Governor Cooper has gone more virtual with his campaigning. And the coronavirus has really underscored a lot of Lieutenant Governor Forest's campaign for the last 7 months. He has been focusing on reopening the economy, and he says he will reopen the state, North Carolina's economy, and North Carolina's schools if he is elected. He says that is the first thing he will do when he is inaugurated on January 1st of this year. Actually, just this week, he responded to a tweet of a video of President Donald Trump at a rally in North Carolina, asking him if he would reopen North Carolina if he wins the governor's seat. And he said absolutely he will do it at 12:01 on January 1st. A big speaking point that he has been harping on for the entire campaign is that no business owner should be told that their business is non-essential, a term that we have heard a lot over the past few months with the coronavirus pandemic, when only essential businesses were allowed to remain open in North Carolina when we first got into those economic shutdowns because of the pandemic. He says that Governor Cooper has caused people to lose their jobs, lose their livelihoods, and that will change if he is elected. It is not the only thing that Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest has campaigned on throughout this process. He is a big proponent of school choice, saying that parents know what school their child should go to over the government. And he has also branded himself as the law and order candidate, saying he will defend the police, not defund the police. And he has also advocated for calling in the National Guard during moments of civil unrest like we have seen in the past few months as well. Now, we really got to see both candidates go head-to-head in the gubernatorial debate in October, where one of the main issues, the main talking points, was the wearing of masks. Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest has said that masks should be a personal choice, that no one should be mandated to wear a mask. Certainly, masks seem to be optional at this event behind me as people roll in and out, some wearing them, some not wearing them. But he says that the government should not be able to tell people when they should wear masks. And he has focused more on protecting people who are most vulnerable for complications of the coronavirus, and said that the healthy people, the people who are less at risk for those complications, should be able to return to work, return to school, and really reopen the economy in North Carolina. On unemployment, he says that Governor Cooper simply pulled the plug on North Carolina's economy without knowing that there was a secure unemployment system in place, and that has cost millions of people in our state their jobs. And he says as soon as he is governor, that will change, and that people will be able to get back to work and back to school. So a lot on the table here tonight. Again, Lieutenant Governor Forest is trailing behind Governor Cooper in those early numbers we are seeing, with about 70% of precincts reporting. We are seeing people come in and out of the event space behind me, and we are told that the Lieutenant Governor will be here tonight at some point speaking to the crowd of reporters. If that happens, we will bring you that live coverage. But for now, reporting in Selma, North Carolina, Maddie Gardner, WFMY News 2.
All right, so, she was just talking about Dan Forest, the lieutenant governor, who is the Republican, who is the challenger to Governor Roy Cooper, who is a Democrat, and, such a split and divided
Yeah,
spot.
but as Maddie said, not really close at this point.
Nope.
The U.S. Senate race for North Carolina is a lot closer than this race for governor. So what that indicates to me early on is that the majority of voters did feel confident heading to the polls in the job Governor Cooper has done with COVID-19. We knew that was going to be a big sticking point. An Elon poll that was conducted recently said North Carolinians gave Cooper a C rating in handling COVID-19. So we didn't really know how this was going to go. Of course, I remember 4 years ago covering then incumbent Pat McCrory trying to get his second term, ultimately being defeated by Cooper. That race was very tight. Neither candidate got 50% of the vote. In fact, the third party candidate took about 2%. Possibly from McCrory, as he thinks was the case in that. But that election went to a recount and went on for days. It looks like it's not going to be the case in this.
Both of them facing something big happening in our state and really in our nation. So Pat McCrory, of course, had HB2, right? And the governor now having, COVID and the response, and people being very divided on both of those issues.
But it's interesting. I'm wondering if North Carolina voters changed their perspective on that, because both of those big issues you brought up had to do with businesses. And it was clear 4 years ago when Pat McCrory lost that perhaps voters were not pleased with how that legislation hurt businesses pulling out. We know PayPal was one of the businesses that pulled out. A lot of the athletic conferences pulled out. But it's interesting because COVID-19 and Governor Cooper's restrictions in this phased reopening plan have had an impact on North Carolina businesses as well. But we're seeing a different outcome in this so far, at least.
At least, that's right. I think it's about 6 percentage points difference at the moment.
Yeah, I'm looking at here the State Board of Elections website. Let me refresh it just so we have the latest information. It looks like 74% of precincts are reporting. About 68% of the ballots cast are already in. And Roy Cooper has 52.34% of the vote. Dan Forest, Lieutenant Governor, has about 46% of the vote. So not close at this point, of course. We do expect more Republican votes to come in later from these precincts.
You think 4.9 million votes in that and only 5 million total. All right, we're going to head it to the studio right now.
Let's get right to some of the big races, and there is a big one brewing. Let's start with the closely watched governor's race.
It's Governor Cooper against his challenger, Dan Forest. Let's bring up the numbers for you because we want to get you the very latest. So stand by. As you know, this is a very highly contested race. And here are the numbers. Incumbent Roy Cooper with 52% of the vote. Dan Forest getting 46%. This is with 73% of the precincts reporting.
And looking at the early results from the quarter-cent sales tax increase. You saw this on your ballot if you went and voted either early or in person today. 66% of voters are against that sales tax increase in Guilford County. 21% of the precincts are reporting. Also tonight, just new, the Associated Press is projecting Democrat Kathy Manning will win the District 6 House seat.
WFMY News 2's Tahisha Moyes has been following this race all day long. Tahisha, have you heard from Kathy Manning yet?
I had a little trouble hearing what you said, Julie, but we do know that Kathy Manning has declared victory. I was just watching a Zoom watch party where she thanked her supporters. She thanked the people in her campaign party for all the work that they've been doing behind the scenes. Now, virtual being a big theme for her in her running for this race. She said she held over 240 Zoom events in the last few months. Now, when she goes to office, she says she plans to do what she can to curtail the COVID-19 pandemic. She slammed President Donald Trump, saying that he did not cause the pandemic, but he did nothing to help, only making it worse. Now, when she is in office officially, now what she says is she plans to work towards accessible and affordable health care, women's issues, and making sure that kids have access to a good education. She has a lot that she has to say, and we'll continue monitoring that and bring that to you later on this evening.
Tahisha, thank you. We are also keeping a very close eye on the presidential election as polls on the West Coast are starting to close.
WFMY News 2's Ben Briscoe is watching this tight race between Trump and Biden.
And nowhere in the country, it seems, is it tighter than right here in our state. I want to show you, this is the State Board of Elections website. Right now, between the two candidates, there's only about a 17,000 vote difference. It is getting tighter and tighter by the moment, just like we knew it would. Here's what else we know. We know right now there are 117,000 outstanding absentee ballots in our state. So 17,000 vote difference, 117,000 outstanding absentee ballots. Here's what that means. If that difference doesn't get bigger overnight, then we're going to have to wait for some of those to be counted all the way up to possibly November 12th.
Ben, thank you. We are also following a major development in the North Carolina Senate race. Senator Thom Tillis has taken his first lead of the night. WFMY News 2's Jess Winters is live at Tillis's watch party in Mooresville. Jess.
Yeah, the North Carolina U.S. Senate race has taken so many twists and turns over the past couple of months and really since October, and we've been talking about the polls all day, but finally we can start talking about those election night results. And Chad, you just mentioned that Tillis has garnered her first lead in a very long time, and I just spoke to his campaign because I'm at his election night watch party, and he's not physically here yet, but his campaign said because this development just came within the past couple of minutes, Cal Cunningham did have a slight lead. They said he was well within striking distance. The night was still young, and that is proving to be true. The night is young. This is a very tight race, narrow margins, guys.
Just thank you. Challenger Cal Cunningham is expected to make an appearance at the state Democratic Party headquarters in Raleigh.
WFMY News 2's Alma McCarty is live there tonight. Hey, Alma.
Yes, Julie and Chad, I am here in downtown Raleigh where we have not seen or heard from Cal Cunningham yet after the polls have closed. We spoke with him earlier today and he seemed very optimistic after campaigning on more of a on the low, on a quieter level for the past several weeks. But what we are seeing now is an extremely close race between him and his opponent, Thom Tillis. Right now I'm reading off of the State Board of Elections website. They are both at 47% within mere percentage points, small fractions of percentage points within one another. Back to you.
A very tight race. Stay with us as we continue to bring you the very latest.
We'll be back here at 10:24 with more team coverage of the 2020 election. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back. We continue our WFMY News 2 digital election coverage, and this is going into, I don't even know what hour it is. They said that we would be here for a while, and you know what? We're going to be here until we know.
Yeah, but fortunately, this platform gives us a chance to tell you the results as they happen. Of course, keep in mind it is still early on, but already the bulk of the North Carolina votes have already been counted because of the way that the State Board of Elections has been able to tabulate the large numbers of early votes that had come in.
Right, so we were just taking a look, the two of us were just taking a look at the governor's race. And when you take a look, Roy Cooper right now has 2.6 million ballots counted for him. Dan Forest has 2.3 million. So you got a total there of 4.9. When you think that only 5.9 million votes were cast, so we only have 1 million more votes to get through to have a winner here.
Yeah, and incumbent Governor Roy Cooper has a commanding 6-point lead thus far over Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest. The Lieutenant Governor's race is a lot closer. We'll take a look at that momentarily, but for now it looks like Republican Mark Robinson is leading State Representative Yvonne Hawley by about 1 percentage point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like so razor thin. All right, so we've got Kevin Kennedy who's there with the governor.
We're at the North Carolina Democratic Party headquarters for what really could be a party unlike any we have ever seen. No supporters here this evening. Everything is being held outside. Only members of the media around me. It's just a different atmosphere with COVID-19 going on right now. That being said, Governor Cooper is expected to be here at some point. We're told that he will speak within probably an hour or maybe two. But that he is going to be speaking at some point this evening. Governor Cooper went into tonight much different than 4 years ago. 4 years ago, he was a challenger, actually won that race by a razor slim margin, 0.02%, about 10,000 votes out of about 4.5 million cast. This time he goes in as the incumbent governor with a lead in most polls showing about 9%. The latest results I looked at just a short time ago had the governor up by about 6%. Once again, the governor is expected to be here tonight. He is expected to speak. When he does, we will bring that to you live. For now, though, we're live in Raleigh. I'm Kevin Kennedy, WFMY News 2.
All right, yeah, and earlier we heard from Maddie Gardner, who is covering Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest, challenging Governor Roy Cooper for the governor's spot. Not very close at this point. No. Certainly not nearly as close as the U.S. Senate race for North Carolina between Tillis and Cunningham, and not as close as the presidential race here in North Carolina.
Although we do have several races that have already been called in our area. So we've got Manning, who has won her seat for District 6, Virginia Fox.
For Congressional District 5 as well. Those two districts pretty much went how we expected, especially given the redistricting that affected mostly Congressional District 6 and ultimately likely allowed Kathy Manning that commanding victory that she got there. I believe we do have Maddie Gardner. She is live at the Lieutenant Governor's race, Dan Forest. Maddie, what's the vibe there with the Lieutenant Governor trailing so far?
And we are still live here in Selma, North Carolina, just outside of Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest's campaign rally tonight. Now 79% of precincts reporting in North Carolina, and Governor Roy Cooper is holding on to a steady lead with 52% of the vote compared to Dan Forest, 46% of the vote right now. So Forest trailing Cooper by a couple of points here. Some outlets are saying that Cooper is going to win this one, but it seems that they are waiting on official word before we hear anything from the Lieutenant Governor himself, and they are saying it is too early to call right now. I just checked in with a member of his campaign staff to see if we would hear from Lieutenant Governor Forest tonight, and he says that we are still waiting and expecting to hear from him, for him to speak to supporters here in Selma, North Carolina, but we just don't know what time that is going to happen. They're going to let us into the building to bring you that speech live. As it stands right now, that is the plan, but certainly more people are coming in and out of the building. We have seen a steady stream of supporters come into the event space behind me, and just as we've seen people come in, we are also seeing people start to head out for the evening. Dan Forest was elected to the lieutenant governor position back in 2012, and he's held that office since 2013. This is his first run for the top position in our state for the governor's mansion, and he is running on a platform that focuses on the economy, on school choice, and on law and order. As far as the economy goes, he says he wants to offer incentives to get jobs back into North Carolina, but his big focus over the last few months has been on simply reopening the economy. He says that Governor Cooper has really let millions of North Carolinians down by pulling the plug on our economy because of the coronavirus pandemic, saying that healthy people should be allowed to continue their lives while we protect the more vulnerable populations from the coronavirus, saying that no business should be told they are not essential and that the economy should simply reopen all of the way here in North Carolina. And that is his plan if he is going to win this election tonight and become governor in January. As far as schools go, same idea here. He says schools should be able to reopen right now, and he also thinks that parents should be involved in choosing their child's school, that they know better than the government about what school that their child should be allowed to go to, and that they should be able to progress at their own pace. Something else he mentioned during several campaign speeches and on his platform on his website is that he believes that there should be armed security guards at each school in North Carolina as well. So more on that safety. When it comes to safety, when it comes to law and order, he says that he is for activating the National Guard during moments of civil unrest like we've seen in the past few months, and he also wants to defend the police, adding that sheriffs should be able to work with immigration control when it comes to keeping immigrants when they are arrested, that they should be able to report that to immigration control and perhaps deport those people who are here. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has been, of course, a big topic of conversation for both candidates, especially at the debate in October. We heard both of them really differ on all fronts about the pandemic, who should be allowed to be out and about, what businesses should be allowed to reopen, and mask wearing. Of course, in the state of North Carolina, masks are required to be worn out in public spaces, and Lieutenant Governor Forest simply believes that people should be able to make that decision on their own, that there should not be a government mandate. He also focused on nursing homes, saying that Governor Cooper really let nursing homes down when it comes to the pandemic, and that about 50% of the deaths in North Carolina he believes could have been avoided if nursing homes were better protected. So very different perspectives on a number of issues here with this race. Again, at last check, more than 75%. Now it's looking like 80% of precincts are reporting, and it shows Governor Cooper still with a lead with 51% of the votes compared to Dan Forest, 46% of the votes. So we will, of course, keep you updated on when we are expecting to hear from the Lieutenant Governor tonight, and we'll bring that to you live.
All right, thanks so much, Maddie. What we want to do is returning to our experts once again, Dr. Nation and Dr. Little. Dr. Little, I know you were paying some close attention to the number of precincts that were reporting, like in Guilford and in Wake counties.
Yes, just a few minutes ago I checked, and only 30 of 206 precincts from Wake County had reported. And about half in Guilford County. Almost all of the other counties were at 100% or close. So if that's accurate, one would expect those counties to lean Democratic, which may change those numbers a little bit for Cunningham and for Biden. we'll see. But let me look. I just pulled it up. Let me see if those numbers are still holding. In Wake, yeah, it's still 30 of 206 reporting. So that means you got an awful lot of votes in Wake County, which in the early voting had over 500,000 votes cast. So you're looking at a big chunk there that hasn't come in yet.
It's interesting to me how Roy Cooper has about 6 percentage points ahead of his Republican challenger. But for lieutenant governor, the Republican challenger has a very much a slimmer margin to their Democratic challenger.
Yeah, I think that really is a factor of a couple things. As you guys have talked about, Cooper is perceived by most people as having done a very competent job with the virus, and so he's benefiting from that. And the reality is, an open seat, Yvonne Holly and Mark Robinson, neither one are particularly well known. So I did expect a little more coattail effect from Cooper than I'm seeing, though.
Yeah, with the lieutenant governor's race, this is historic. It's the first time North Carolina will have a black lieutenant governor, no matter who wins this race. It looks like Mark Robinson, the Republican, is pulling ahead ever so slightly, even from just a few moments ago, now with 51% of the vote compared to Yvonne Holly, who is a state representative with 48% of the vote. So, Dr. Nation, explain the mindset of a voter who might split the ticket, so to say, with a lieutenant governor and a governor. That was the case 4 years ago, and it's looking like it could be the case this year as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, voters are not one-issue voters. So they look at the entire picture, and they look at the, you know, the gravitas of each candidate and make a decision based on that. And so, usually, as Tom had said, he's kind of surprised that, you know, she's not benefiting from Cooper's, you know, popularity, particularly how, you know, people in the state have perceived him to have dealt with COVID and just his overall handling of what's going on in the state at this particular time for the last 6 months or so. But again, you know, how did these candidates really outline their platform? Who did a better job of that? And just let's be honest, you know, voters really see the lieutenant governor's job as less essential than the governor's job, and they may not have been paying close attention to, you know, to these candidates. So it is a candidate that actually made the best case out there. So I think that is what's impacting this result that we're seeing, and it's pretty close. And it's pretty close. It's showing us. It's showing us that you know, they're not well known, and you know, and their platform is not well known to the voters either.
And we've been talking a little bit about the power of social media, too, influencing this election, influencing especially the youth vote. We know, Dr. Little, that Mark Robinson made a name for himself a couple years ago at the Greensboro City Council meeting when he made a very impassioned speech in favor of the Second Amendment when the City Council was talking about canceling the Greensboro gun show after the devastating and deadly Parkland High School shooting. Millions of people saw that viral video. It was all over the national networks. Do you think that fame and that social media presence is helping him with this small victory or small margin so far?
I think that definitely helped him in the primary. I'm not as convinced it helped him here. I didn't watch the debate, but from people that I talked to said that in the debate he came across as a bit more confident than Yvonne Holly did, a little more forceful. Again, most people didn't watch the debate, and as my partner said, you know, most people don't really pay that much attention to Lieutenant Governor, but I think, you know, that came across, and I didn't see very many Holly ads until just the last couple of weeks, whereas Robinson was on early. He was on with Dan Forrest. They ran some ads together. He had a stronger television presence, at least early, and that may also have helped.
Speaking in those ads, though, Forrest aligned himself very closely with Robinson. It was also almost like they were running mates.
Deal.
Yeah, but that doesn't seem to be benefiting Dan Forrest, at least with these results we're seeing.
Yeah, I agree. But, you know, again, I think that was the reality, and we've talked about that either way, we're going to have our first lieutenant governor of color. I think on Dan Forest's part, that was an appeal to voters of color to see that the lieutenant governor he's running with was an African American. Again, maybe it didn't help in general, but the polls were showing Forest losing by 10 or 12%. It's now close to 5%, so maybe it did help.
All right, so now we are looking at the AP results, and it looked for a time that it was going to go towards Biden, and it had that blue kind of hue. Now it's looking like it is going for Trump, leading by, what, 1 point or so?
It looks like very close with 90% of the expected vote in. Is that still too close to call, do you think, Dr. Little?
I'm pulling it up now to see what exactly the numbers are. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're still talking about less than 0.5%. And again, I just checked. Wake has now reported about 20 precincts, or about 30. I think it was 41 precincts, with still another 150 to go. So again, depending on where those votes, and as was said earlier, we got to remember there's still 100 and some mail-in ballots that haven't been received or counted. So over those next 12 days, you have to also look at that. I definitely wouldn't call it yet.
And that is something to remember, that we have until November 12th to count all of those ballots, and it's not until November 13th where our counties are going to certify everything with the canvass.
Right, and so we'll have to see.
All right, so
just
as we're
looking
all
at Wake
taking a look
again,
at
just to see if those numbers, yeah, Wake still only 41 of 206 precincts. And again, one would think that those precincts around Wake County, the Cary area, Raleigh area are going to go Democratic, so I wouldn't call it yet.
Okay, and you know, this has flip-flopped several times tonight, just like we've seen.
Oh, yeah. All right, so let's look at Forsyth County now. I am pulling this up on the AP, trying to see the precincts reporting here in Forsyth County. Looks like 51% of precincts reporting there. Joe Biden leading by 17. Our experts, we thank you. We'll check back in with you in a moment, but right now we want to go out live to Marissa Tansino. She is monitoring the situation at the precincts in Forsyth County and the all-important Winston-Salem mayor's race. Marissa?
We're here outside the Forsyth County Board of Elections, and you can see that a little bit of activity still going on behind me here. Most of the activity happened probably between 8 o'clock and 9:30, but to bring everybody up to speed just joining us, this is where chief judges are coming and dropping off all of their gear from the precincts. And they have plastic barriers here you can see on top of the trash cans, and then the ballot boxes on that are being presumably put on those shelves. And then they give the little
Had a little bit of a technical difficulty there. You know, we're doing lots of live shots here, there, and everywhere. We're working to get our crews back in so that we can continue to hear what's going on in Forsyth County with Marissa Tansino.
Yes, it was interesting, and I don't know if you saw the same, True. Looking at social media today, it seemed like voters who did vote on Election Day said that there was a steady stream of people going to those precincts, but it wasn't necessarily super crowded. There weren't lines out the door. We know President Donald Trump was really hoping for what he called a red wave today, a surge of Republicans to turn out on Election Day. That's still, it's possible that that did happen, but it seems like here in North Carolina, especially in some of our local triad counties, voters had a pretty seamless time getting through and casting their ballots.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really hear any problems like we have heard in years past, where people were still standing in line at 7:30 trying to get their votes in.
So we talked a lot about absentee and just the unprecedented number of people who voted early, either by mail-in ballot or during the early voting period. And Tanya, I know we both got a question from viewers about what happens to the absentee ballots that are postmarked by today, by 5 p.m., but are not received until days later. Are they still counted even if their votes would not necessarily make a difference in the overall outcome?
And so, you know, Charlie Collicutt from Guilford County Board of Elections, he was very adamant. He's like, every vote counts. We count every single vote. And his thing was, it may not matter much for the presidential election, but it may really matter for some local races.
Okay.
And he's like, so without a doubt, they count every single one. And again, that count's going to go all the way through November the 12th. And then each one of the counties does their canvass, their deadline for the canvass, which is they look at how each ballot is counted, and then they look to see if there were any problems. Were there equipment problems? Was there ballot stuffing? Was there tampering of anything? And so they take those 10 days to do that. They officiate all of the results on November the 13th, which is Friday the 13th. Just saying. I mean, it is 2020,
Coincidentally,
right?
yes.
All right. And then that goes to the State Board of Elections, and then they make sure everything is certified by November 24th. So this really is a long haul. I mean, you know, they call states and the candidates say, you know, great, I won, but it really doesn't become official for a much longer time.
And that canvass, we saw how important that was for the governor's race in 2016. Yes. Governor Pat McCrory did not concede on election night. It took him days into that canvass for him to finally concede to now Governor Roy Cooper. We don't see that close margin, at least not at this point in the governor's race, but, you know, a canvass process could really make the difference in some of these local races.
Right, and then, I mean, if you want to take a look on the national, you know, stage, I mean, we've had the same issue before. I mean, when you think of Bush and Gore.
Bush, Gore in Florida.
I mean, that took a long time. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for something like this to drag on for a little bit.
Yeah, I think we have some numbers here that show kind of the voter makeup, and I think the number of voters who voted early. So if you can pull that up on your screen. I've also refreshed the latest absentee data that came in from the State Board of Elections from this morning. It looks like 4.5 million people cast absentee ballots this year, either in person, early, or by mail. And compare that to the 3.1 million who voted early or absentee in the 2016 election. There was clear voter enthusiasm this year.
And you know, we saw that Dr. Nation was like, I'm sure COVID played a part in it, but I also think, you know, this year it was kind of like a, hey, if you want to vote absentee, just vote absentee. And I think a lot of people just said, well, okay, I don't normally always make it to the polls, but at least this way I know that I will.
Yeah, I mean, the uncertainty of what would happen on Election Day. Sure. And for a lot of people, just convenience. I mean, North Carolina is one of the states where you did not need an excuse to get a mail-in ballot. Right. You did have to request a ballot. And so that, of course, was part of the process and a part of the discussion in how long this was going to take and how long it was going to take to mail the ballots back. But yeah, it's very evident that North Carolina voters wanted to have a say in this election and make their voices heard.
Absolutely. All right, so when we are going now to go over to Denise McMillan, and I'm trying to like figure out where she is in the scope of everything. We've got team coverage and we've got people all over the state.
I believe she's still in Rockingham County checking out how those precincts are doing. Denise, can you give us an update on how things are going there? We know Rockingham County dealt with some issues early on.
She's doing a live shot through her phone, and so sometimes so many people are on their phones at one specific place that is not allowing that signal to get through. So we're going to continue to try and get Denise McMillan there in Rockingham County. Let's see if we've got another local reporter that we are able to go to at this point.
So while we wait for them to get situated, Tanya, why don't we give an update on the electoral college situation here with the presidential race? A lot of folks asking about that. Of course, the magic number, as we've been explaining, is 270. The AP is calling the states that we expected to be called a certain way. The battleground states, the toss-ups, are still unofficial results thus far, even though it looks like President Donald Trump is now leading in North Carolina votes by about 2 percentage points.
Right now, though, when we look at electoral college votes, we've got 98 for President Trump. We've got 131 for Joe Biden. And again, that magic number is 270, 538 total that they're able to get.
Yeah, President Donald Trump essentially needs to get all of the states that he got 4 years ago, it seems, in order to clinch this presidency. He needs North Carolina. He needs Florida, which is also leaning to Republican at this point. He needs Michigan. He needs Wisconsin, and he needs Pennsylvania. The candidates heavily campaign in Pennsylvania, almost as much as they did in North Carolina, especially in this last week, trying to rally their bases. It didn't seem like they were trying to get voters who were undecided, but they were trying to make sure that their bases turned out and made sure that their voices were heard in this election.
It seems to be paying off at this moment for President Trump. It was looking like our state was going blue for a while. Of course, it still has not been called, but right now it's got that red tinge to it. That's what the AP does when they see that it's going one way or the other.
Yeah, and North Carolina now getting some of those precinct from Election Day results. Historically, more Republicans turn out on Election Day. Democrats vote early. Let's check in with our friends in the studio keeping track of the local races.
I'm Julie Luck alongside Chad Silver with the latest election results in North Carolina.
And what a turn of events over the past hour here in our state. WFMY News 2's Ben Briscoe is taking a closer look at an evolving presidential and Senate race.
So we told you all along that the Democrats would lead early on in the night, and then it would shift possibly towards the Republicans if enough of them showed up on Election Day. We are starting to see that. Take a look right now. President Donald Trump is leading in our state by about 36,000 votes, with 91% of the votes in so far. It's interesting to look at where they are coming from. You want to see that Charlotte, major Democratic stronghold in our state, has 95% of their precincts reporting, but Union County, the suburbs right next door that tend to go red, only has 15%. So think about that when you're trying to interpret these numbers. We also want to look at the Senate race. Right now, Thom Tillis has a pretty strong lead over Cal Cunningham. He is leading 48% of the vote to 47% of the vote, which is the strongest he's been at all night. Of course, we will continue to monitor these races as well as all of your local races too. Forsyth County and Guilford County are getting closer and closer to all their precincts in. We'll keep you updated when we learn more.
Thank you, Ben. Another closely watched race here in North Carolina is the governor's race.
And right now, this race is not as close as many expected. Incumbent Governor Roy Cooper has kind of a commanding lead right now. We want to bring you some of these results. Here they are. 52% of the vote right now. Now, listen to this. 84% of precincts are reporting, and Dan Forrest has just 47% of the vote.
WFMY News 2's Kevin Kennedy joins us live now in Raleigh, where we expect to see Governor Roy Cooper at some point tonight.
Yes, we do. We're outside the North Carolina Democratic Party headquarters. Certainly going to be a different party tonight. It's outside because of social distancing situations, and no supporters here, unlike years past. It's just myself and a bunch of other media members. As you mentioned, though, Governor Cooper is expected to arrive at some point. I spoke with his campaign chairman earlier today. Said the governor was optimistic. He was positive about the results. He went into today with about a 9% lead when you look at the polls and stuff like that. Certainly early results showed him doing well, and then obviously the latest results that we have right now shows him up by about 5%. So certainly a good situation. Once again, the governor is expected to speak here in a little bit. When he does, we will bring that to you live. For now, though, we're live in downtown Raleigh. I'm Kevin Kennedy, WFMY News 2.
Kevin, thank you. On the other side of the ticket, WFMY News 2's Maddie Gardner is in Selma, southeast of Raleigh, where Governor Cooper's challenger, Dan Forrest, is holding a watch party.
Yeah, so we are starting to see people leave the event space where that watch party is happening. But I just spoke to a member of Dan Forrest's campaign staff, and he says that the lieutenant governor, will speak no matter the results of tonight's election, and that we will be allowed inside to hear what he has to say to those supporters who have shown up and stayed for him tonight. Certainly a very different candidate than Governor Roy Cooper. They differ on pretty much every point, every platform point of this campaign, but also in the way that they have been campaigning. Manning. We have seen the lieutenant governor hold these in-person rallies and events like we are seeing tonight for fundraising, whereas Governor Cooper has had more virtual events because of the pandemic. So we are still waiting to hear what time we are expecting to hear from Lieutenant Governor Forrest, but we'll let you know when that happens.
Maddie, thank you so much. Now to some more results. Democratic candidate Kathy Manning is declaring victory for the congressional race for newly drawn District 6. Manning has a sizable lead and a sizable win with 63% of the vote. Lee Haywood, her challenger, at 37%.
On the state level, Senate Leader Phil Berger is leading the race for his Senate seat with 96% of the precincts reporting. He also has a commanding 69% of the vote over his challenger, Wally White.
Stay with us as we continue to monitor the races and the results. We will be back here on WFMY News 2 in about 30 minutes with another live update.
We're also live streaming on WFMYnews2.com, on Facebook, YouTube, and the News 2 app.
Really all platforms, really. So this is your team for Election Night 2020. More team coverage very soon. We'll see you back here in about 30 minutes.
All right, so we are back with you with our WFMY News 2 digital election coverage. With me right now, again, is Leah Wilson, and she is the one who is checking on all the trends. What is everyone searching for online?
So, you know, it has changed vastly from this morning until now. Like, you know, it's been who's going to win. Now everybody wants to know definitely about results, but maps. It's all about battleground states.
Okay.
Which of the battleground states, especially North Carolina, is a hot topic. Who are we going to pick? Who do we like? Are we going to pick Biden? Are we going to, because, you know, it's a must-win state.
And it's been flip-flopping all night long.
All night long. It's been going crazy. And you'll see here for our Google Trends, what people are searching. Now, this does not mean that this is who's being voted for more, just who is being searched more. So it could be that Trump has been out in the spotlight for the last 4 years, so we've heard from him. He's on Twitter all the time, so we know all about him. But we don't know a lot about Joe. You know, he's been out of the spotlight for a while. So people are searching for him a lot, and then, of course, you have Joe Jorgensen and Hawkins, excuse me. So, yeah, we're searching to find out who they are. But really, it's just cross Twitter, cross Google, battleground states. Who is North Carolina going to pick? Florida is a big one. Who are they going to pick? And right now they're saying it's too close to call for that.
Yeah, I mean, both of them, the AP had them both leaning blue at some point. Now they have them both leaning red at some point. But again, nobody is calling this as of yet.
Yeah, and Texas is another big one that we're watching because, you know, typically a red state. Now maybe it might go blue. So big one to
38 electoral votes. So that's a big state
to
get.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You want Texas.
You want Texas, you want Florida because it's 29, you know, you want North Carolina because it's 15.
Absolutely.
Yep, we got it. All right. Anything else that people are searching? They're no longer searching Wednesday. You guys have gotten over the Wednesday
You've gotten over Wednesday. You're in the moment now. You're ready to see who's going to win. It really is just about that. Everybody wants results. We want to know who's going to win. And like we said before, might be a while before we know.
All right. Speaking of results, that's what we've got Megan Malaris for at the big board, looking and breaking down all of those numbers.
Yeah, well, Leah said viewers are clearly interested in the results of the presidential contest and North Carolina's role in that. So let me show you here the AP election results. The Associated Press has already called several states which are clearly marked in red and blue. These are the states that we consider non-surprise states. They were expected to go this way. It's the battleground states that Leah mentioned that we are going to be keeping a close eye on. North Carolina, Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, even Missouri now looking like a toss-up. It looks like as of the past hour or so, North Carolina has shifted more Republican. Earlier, we were seeing this leaning Democrat, but this is about what we expected to happen based on the votes that were submitted. Remember, the record number of absentee and early votes that came in earlier leaned Democrat. More registered Democrats participated in that early absentee voting process than Republicans did. President Donald Trump was hoping for an election day red wave, as he called it, and it looks like he might be getting that. This map is shaping up very similarly to how it did in 2016. So even though you see here him still trailing Biden by a considerable margin, this could change if President Trump wins all of these battleground states, including North Carolina's 15 electoral votes. Tanya?
Now we're going to concentrate on a North Carolina House seat, and that is District 2. Deborah Ross, the Democrat, they have given the race to her at 65%. Alan Swain was the Republican Party campaign opponent at 32%. So let's go out now to the Deborah Ross campaign and hear what she has to say.
County, so many people who have really gone above and beyond to turn this county out. And I think by the end of the night, you will see that Wake County is one of the best performing counties in this entire state because it's got people who care so much about the future of this country. And we really need to focus on that future. We have a president who has let us down. He has not taken this pandemic seriously, and as a result, this county, this state, and this country have suffered mightily. And they've suffered in their health. They've suffered economically, and they've suffered from a lack of leadership. What we want to do is bring people back together, give them faith in their government, in what we can do to make their lives better. We want to be able to get people back to work safely, back to school safely, make sure that they have affordable and accessible health care, make sure that we take care of our seniors. And we can do that working together. I've heard so many stories around this county about students who are worried about their next semester, parents who are struggling, juggling jobs and student learning. We can work together and get things back on track with a new sense of leadership in Washington, D.C. And this can be bipartisan. It's been done before. We all know what people need, and people need the same things, whether they're white, whether they're black, whether they're Asian, whether they're Latinx. We all need the same basic services from our government, and we need leadership that leads with compassion and that can work across the aisle. That's what I'm going to do for Wake County in Washington, and that's what I did with my opponent on the election trail. We got along. We understood that we could agree about some things and disagree about some things. We need to bring that spirit back to governing. We need to show people that we care about them rather than partisan bickering. I want to thank all of you for being out here tonight. We're going to take this county, this state, and this country forward in 2021. Thank you so much.
Deborah Ross, who is now the newest House representative there for District 2.
Yeah, she's a civil rights lawyer. She said she campaigned on a platform for fairness and justice to level the playing field. But Tanya, this result was not at all surprising. Congressional District 2, along with Congressional District 6, was redistricted. That was part of the efforts because of the 3-judge panel that ruled that the maps used in 2016 were gerrymandered in favor of Republicans. So these new maps this year was the first that they were allowed to be used. And it was expected that Congressional District 2 for the United States House and Congressional District 6, which the AP already called in favor of Kathy Manning, winning that with a very commanding victory. These Democratic wins are what we expected here.
Yeah, and Deborah Ross really talked about how Wake came out. The Democrats in Wake came out. And so we know we've been watching that really closely to see how that's going to affect the governor's race as well. Ben Briscoe is over by the big board taking a look at some more numbers.
Hey guys, we just are hearing that the Associated Press has called the governor's race for Roy Cooper. I want to hop on our map in transparency here and show you how they are coming up with those numbers. So one of the things that this map allows us to do is to look at the race and where those numbers are coming from. So this is how the AP is getting their numbers. You can see that green check mark. It is brand new for Roy Cooper right there. He has 51% of the vote right now compared to 46% of the vote against Dan Forest. At this point, they felt like it was just too much for Dan Forest to overcome, especially when you look at some of the stronghold counties that he was supposed to be carrying are already almost completely in. Union County, a big chunk of it, 60% of precincts went to him, but if you look, a big chunk of it, 63% of precincts in so far. So we are also seeing places like Wake County where only 47% of precincts are in at this point. That highly expected to go towards Governor Roy Cooper. That's how they're coming up with these decisions right now. They're doing it very carefully, and it is taking a little bit longer than you might remember to call some of these races because they want to make sure they get it right, as do we. Here's what else I want to show you while I've got you here. 117,000 outstanding absentee ballots in our state. Remember, the Supreme Court gave North Carolina until November 12th to count anything that might come in the mail. So, if you say that perhaps all of those were mailed in and they're waiting to see if they're going to get there, then we really need the other races to be more than 117,000 to really be 100% sure. And if you look right now at the presidential race, it's not that big. We see President Donald Trump with 49% of the vote and Joe Biden with 48%, 0.8, basically 49% of the vote there too. The difference between them right now is about 44,000 votes. Definitely not what we are seeing in this 117,000 outstanding. Now there is one caveat to all of this. Some of these people could have come to vote today and instead just decided to throw out that absentee ballot. At the end of the night, the State Board of Elections is going to start matching up names to see what the real number is. As soon as we get that, we will pass it on to you. I also want to show you, while you're here, some of the local races. So let's change here to Guilford County because there's one that we are getting a lot of questions about. And that race, if you give me just a second, it takes a little minute here to pull things up sometimes. We're going to do Guilford County, the referendum, and I want to show you right now, this is the school bonds issue. Here's what we are seeing. For the school bond itself, it looks like right now with 125 out of 165 precincts reporting, a big chunk there, the majority of people are for the school bond. 72% of people say they want that right now, but how do you pay for it? Well, that's what that tax increase was supposed to be, the 1/4 of the cent tax increase. That is getting voted down right now. 66% of people say, no, we're good. We don't need that right now. These numbers still could change a little bit, though, because, again, only 125 of 165 precincts in. We're going to keep monitoring all of this all night long. I'll be back with more in a minute.
All right, looks like it's time to bring back our experts now that the AP is calling the governor's race in favor of Democrat incumbent Roy Cooper. Dr. Nation, what do you make of these results and the margin? Governor Cooper leading Dan Forest by 5% of the votes?
So that was kind of in line with what we saw in the polls. Yeah, if they had this red wave that the Trump campaign or the Republicans thought they would have, then it would have looked a little bit different. But obviously, we understood that throughout the campaign season, the governor really held a lead in the polls. So I'm not at all surprised about that. I'm actually a little bit more surprised about the Senate race and how that is going with Tillis coming back. But we'll see how that goes over the next day or so. Obviously, Kyle Cunningham shot himself in the foot with this scandal, so that impacted the race a bit. But for the governor's race, it all makes sense. It all kind of fell into place.
Yeah, so this 100,000 outstanding absentee ballots that Ben just mentioned would not make a difference, so to say, in the governor's race, but they could in the U.S. Senate race, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add one thing on the governor's race. I am a little surprised that it's not bigger. I think this goes back to what my partner said earlier about some people not wanting to report because the polls were showing them up 8 to 10%. I think what we're seeing is it's about 4% less than we thought, and the same thing's happening in the Cunningham race, but that was a 3% margin in favor of Cunningham. So now it's a 1% margin in favor of Tillis. So I do think there is a little bit of that red surge going on right now. You know, the lead for Cooper was so big it couldn't be overcome. But right now it appears that it was big enough surge to overcome the leads for Biden and for Cunningham. Now, there's still about 200 precincts left to be reported from urban areas in Lake and Guilford. So I don't think this thing's over yet.
Okay. And what are we thinking at this point of other parts of the nation that we need to be watching? Because, I mean, the first thing that we all wanted to see is what was going on with the governor's race, and then we'll want to see what's going on with the Senate race. But aside from that, what else is on your radar right now?
For me, it's Arizona. It looks like AP has called leaning blue for Arizona. If Arizona goes Democratic, that's going to make things a little bit easier for Biden. But he's still, if that goes, he's still probably going to need to pick up Pennsylvania. I think I'd have to do the math, but I think he's still going to fall just a bit short with Arizona if he gets Wisconsin and Michigan. But Arizona does right now, with about 80% of the vote, it appear to be going for Joe Biden, and so that's what I'm looking at.
All right, Dr. Nation, what are you looking at? Because I know we all have our own things that we like to kind of focus on.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Arizona as well. But I'm also looking at how Wisconsin is going to shake out. It seemed to be an interesting thing going on there. Maybe they had a red surge there. The Democrats didn't campaign a lot in Wisconsin, and looking at the numbers now, I think the Democrats may be worried about that. Something similar to what happened in 2016 with Clinton. I thought Ohio probably would have been a little closer, and I'm still looking at Ohio. And of course, I lived in Ohio for a long time, so it's like part of my life's journey. So I'm always interested in states that I've lived in, and so I'm looking at that as well. These results coming in, and I thought it would be closer, but it seemed like the Democrats probably won't pick that up. So those are the states that I'm actually focusing on.
Okay, Dr. Nation, you mentioned Ohio. It looks like the AP is reporting President Donald Trump leading there by 7 points. Ohio, of course, a key battleground state and very important in the makeup of the Electoral College with 18 important electoral votes. Compare that to North Carolina's 15 electoral votes, and that's a very important state. But Dr. Little, I want to bring up Florida. We are looking at Florida very closely as potentially making or breaking this election for a certain candidate as well. 29 electoral votes. It looks like 91% of the vote is in Florida, and President Trump is leading by 3 points. The president won Florida 4 years ago. Do you think he'll win Florida again, and what could that mean for the overall outcome?
Again, it depends on where those remaining 9% are coming from, but I would say definitely right now Trump is in the driver's seat in Florida. And again, what that means is if he wins Florida, North Carolina, and Georgia, then and let's say that Biden picks up Arizona, I think Biden has to run all three, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and to get there, I think. I have to look at the numbers to be sure of that, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
And Dr. Nation, you lived in the Midwest, as you mentioned. We know Wisconsin and Michigan are very important as well. Currently, the AP has them leaning Republican. President Trump won them 4 years ago. He needs to win those two states again, correct?
Yes, he does. So if he wins these two states, he wins. So he wins Wisconsin, wins Michigan, wins Florida. Then I think he is in pretty good shape because they he probably could lose Pennsylvania if I'm looking at the numbers and still be okay and still, get to the 270 before Biden. So yeah, those are, and Michigan looks like, just like Ohio looks like it's gonna go red. Michigan looks like it's going red as well. So they may have had the red wave as the Republicans wanted.
All right, and we're looking at now the Senate map. Both of you, we're still too close to call in some of these battleground states we just mentioned for the presidential race. The same is true for the Senate race. We know the special election in Georgia can make a big impact. Of course, our North Carolina for U.S. Senate race is still very too close to call, it seems, within 1 percentage point. What do you think at this point the makeup of the U.S. Senate will be, perhaps at the end of all this, Dr. Little?
Well, looking at it right now, I think Arizona is going to go. I think that seems to be pretty looking good for Kelly. So that's a pickup. Colorado's a pickup. I still think that Sarah Gideon's going to hold on in Maine. But that may be it, which would make it 51-49 Republican, unless the Democrats pick up a surprise somewhere, or unless Cunningham comes back. But right now, I'm going to say 51-49 Republican for the Senate.
All right, and again, we know that Senate Democrats need to net 3 or 4 seats depending on who wins the presidency, because Tanya, the vice president, of course, tasks the tie-breaking vote in the U.S. Senate. So we'll be closely watching this as well. But it looks like the Tillis-Cunningham race still too close to call.
Yeah, I agree on all of that.
We are efforting right now that Roy Cooper is going to be taking the stage somewhat soon. We do have crews there in Raleigh. Our own Kevin Kennedy is right now waiting for Governor Cooper to take the stage. And again, the AP has called the race for Governor Cooper with about 5 percentage points or so at that. And we're taking a look at those numbers right now. But it's looking like the governor's race has been called. The lieutenant governor's race has not been called, and the margin there for the lieutenant governor's race is about like 1 or 2%. Here we go to Raleigh.
Ladies, Kristen Cooper, you have done so much, and our state is so lucky to have you as First Lady, but I'm even luckier. And our daughters, Hillary, Natalie, and Claire, who are behind me, you have inspired me to do more. Your mom and I love you, and I'm so proud to be your dad. I'm grateful to my brother Pell and his family, and if our mom and dad were here with us, they'd be standing right here. Instead, they are smiling down on us. I thank them for everything, especially for showing me what it means to love our state. For months, the nation has focused on North Carolina, and it's come down to counting the votes. I know that there are a lot of important races that are still too close to call, and we must let the process work to be sure that all the legal votes are counted. The State Board of Elections has run things with the utmost integrity during a global pandemic and tough races, and I believe that they will continue to do so. To the people of North Carolina, thank you so much for electing me as your governor for another 4 years. Serving in this office has been the honor of my life. I'm grateful and humble to the people who've trusted me to continue the progress that we've already made here. I spent much of the last 4 years visiting communities, big and small, all around our state. And no matter where I was, I found the same thing. North Carolinians are resilient. We are creative. We are innovative, cooperative, inclusive, and we do not give up easily. That's true for the small business owners in the mountains, the factory workers in the Piedmont, and the farmers in the East. Here's what I know. Campaign season is tough, especially this one. But North Carolinians are tougher. They know how to do their duty and vote and then get on with their lives. And that's good, because in order to move forward in the coming weeks, we have a hard job ahead, and we have to get on with it. We have to work harder than ever to understand each other's perspective, to strive to respect each other, even though our political beliefs may still be different. Then we need to come together as a state and realize North Carolina's boundless potential.
You are listening and watching to Governor Roy Cooper give his victory speech. He has won another term in a highly contentious race against Dan Forest. Our coverage of election night continues now. We are watching tight races in North Carolina, of course, along with the presidential race.
Ben Briscoe, we'll take a closer look at the presidential race among North Carolinians, but let's get to our other state numbers first.
Let's start with the U.S. Senate race. Senator Thom Tillis versus challenger Cal Cunningham. This is a tight one, folks. Incumbent Thom Tillis with 49% of the vote, Cal Cunningham with 47%. 96% of the precincts are reporting. Now to locally race. Democrat Kathy Manning has declared victory in the congressional race for District 6. She is the winner, and she has a sizable lead with 62% of the vote.
Now to the governor's race. You just heard from Governor Roy Cooper, who has declared victory over Republican Dan Forest. You can see the race was not very close for much of the night. These are actually the lieutenant governor's race. You can see here Mark Robinson with a lead over Yvonne Lewis Holly. He's from Greensboro. 94% of the precincts are reporting in this one.
Now to the race for Attorney General. AG Josh Stein holds this is a very close race. 50% with the incumbent right now, and also versus his opponent Jim O'Neill. 50%. Obviously, this is one we're going to have to watch very closely.
Among the local races in Guilford County, voters had to decide on a bond referendum for Guilford County schools and a quarter-cent sales tax increase. You can see the bond referendum passed very handedly, 73% with 58% of the precincts reporting. And then looking at the quarter-cent sales tax increase numbers, this number actually went the opposite way. 67% of voters are against that sales tax increase. 58% of the precincts reporting here as well.
Now WFMY News 2's Ben Briscoe has been watching the races all evening long.
And Ben, we just saw a lot of the numbers, but give them some context for us.
So in North Carolina right now, President Donald Trump is up above Joe Biden by about 64,000 votes. Here's what we know. We're watching very closely where is left to see what type of votes might be coming in. I can tell you that all of this reliably red area that Donald Trump won in 2016 very strongly is pretty much all in at 100% right now. There's maybe one or two counties that are about 80%. But take a look. Wake County right now is only at 68%. Greensboro still 76%. Forsyth finally up to 95%. So we're going to have to watch very closely over the next few minutes and possibly hours to see if that number is enough for Joe Biden to overtake Donald Trump again and regain the lead.
And thank you. Let's continue our coverage now. Guilford County extended polling at one location due to an issue this morning, but all the results are now in.
WFMY News 2's Adore Chumba is live at the Guilford County Board of Elections tonight. Adore, sounds like they're still counting tonight.
That's right. This is mission central for the counting process here in Guilford County. I'm going to step away from the frame there, and you're going to see right there, they're putting the return ballots through the counting machine. That's what they're doing over there right now. About 125 of the 165 precincts have reported here. And as you mentioned earlier, right now, it's looking good for the school bond.
Well, clearly we're having some problems with her microphone there, but she did say that there are 125 of the 165 precincts are reporting, so more than half, but there still is a ways to go.
And 11 o'clock at night, still working very hard there in Guilford County. Now let's head east, where marchers headed to the polls just days after a clash between demonstrators and officers. WFMY News 2's Grace Holland joins us live now in Alamance County with more.
Well, it is a quiet end here in Graham to what has been a very busy day across Alamance County. Just a few minutes ago, poll workers here at the Alamance County Board of Elections left. They told me they were done. They've got all the votes counted, all the ballots are in here, and we are now learning more about what those results will mean going forward. But they have headed home after a busy day. Now, you mentioned, of course, the march to the polls earlier today that took place this afternoon. Organizers said around 1,000 people at the highest count were here in downtown Graham for that event. That came after a march on Saturday that ended with arrests and pepper spray on the crowd. Not make it to the polls on Saturday, but they did make it to their polling location today, and then they proceeded to march into downtown Graham to the courthouse square during that as well. All of that went off very peacefully, not any unrest during that, even though it was a lot of people moving through the city. All of that is now very quieted down, and I'll have more of a wrap up of what we've seen here in Alamance County coming up in a few minutes.
Grace, thank you. We have knowns and unknowns tonight. We know that Governor Cooper has won another term in office. Unknowns, the presidential election, the Senate race, a lot to be seen still.
Absolutely, and a lot more to talk about. WFMY News 2 at 11 starts right now. Tonight, history in motion.
An election unlike any you've seen before. Record turnout nationwide in the throes of a global pandemic.
Boxes bursting with ballots as millions vote by mail. Millions more wearing masks, waiting in line, choosing to go in person.
Trump versus Biden, Tillis versus Cunningham, Cooper versus Forrest. From the White House to the State House, months of campaigning comes down to this.
Every county counts. Every city has a say. It's your community, your country.
Your voice, your vote. WFMY News 2 at 11. Election night 2020 starts right now.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us on this special edition of WFMY News 2 at 11. We've just heard that Governor Roy Cooper has declared victory. He did give an acceptance speech, and now we are continuing our coverage of Election Night 2020.
We are watching some very tight races in our state, including, of course, you know, the presidential race.
Ben Briscoe will be taking a closer look at the presidential race among North Carolinians, but let's get to our other state numbers first.
Let's start with the U.S. Senate race. We are talking about Thom Tillis versus his challenger, Cal Cunningham. Here are the latest numbers for you. Incumbent Thom Tillis with 49% of the vote, Cal Cunningham 47%, very close, but a lot of the numbers are in, folks. 97% precincts reporting.
Next up, we're taking a look at Democrat Kathy Manning, who has taken on Lee Hayward in that newly redrawn District 6 race. And Kathy Manning has declared victory in the congressional race for District 6. You can see here, 62% over her challenger, Lee Hayward. Moving on, the governor's race. We already heard from Governor Roy Cooper tonight in his acceptance speech. 52% over Dan Forrest, his lieutenant governor. 47%, 98% of the precincts are reporting.
Now to the race for lieutenant governor. It's Republican Mark Robinson versus Yvonne Lewis Hawley. 52% are voting for Mark Robinson, with 48% going to Yvonne Lewis-Hawley. 97% of the precincts are reporting.
And in the race for Attorney General, this was a race that everyone was watching closely too. Attorney General Josh Stein holds a slight lead over his Republican challenger, Jim O'Neill, who's actually from Forsyth County. It's not clear the numbers in this race right now, but we do know that the Attorney General does hold a slight lead over his Republican challenger, Jim O'Neill. You can see it right there. Boy, it is neck and neck. It looks like really just maybe 10,000 votes separate the two.
Now we're going to Guilford County, where there were two ballot measures on the ballot for Guilford County. The first one is that $300 million bond referendum. 73% of the voters in Guilford County voting yes, with 58% of the precincts reporting. Now we're going to take a look at the next ballot measure, and that is a quarter-cent sales tax in Guilford County. Against is getting 67% of the vote. Keep in mind, Guilford County Schools is saying that they needed a yes for the school bond referendum. They also said they needed a yes for the quarter-cent sales tax in order to move forward with their improvements and renovations and repairs for many Guilford County schools.
And it looks like they've got one but didn't get the other, so it'll be interesting to see how they're able to move forward with one portion of this and not the other. All right, let's move on to our team coverage tonight. Our team is set up across the Triad and the state. We're bringing you the latest results, the status at polling places, and how candidates are responding. You can find full results on our free smartphone app and WFMYnews2.com.
Now we are getting a closer look at the race for the White House. President Donald Trump seeking a second term, Democratic nominee Joe Biden hoping to usher in a new era.
And we have seen these numbers fluctuate all night long, but currently President Donald Trump is winning with 50% of the vote over former Vice President Joe Biden with 49%. Now, it's important to note in this race, 98% of the precincts are reporting. If you were watching CBS News coverage of this, they were really relying heavily on the numbers that they were getting in just within the last couple of minutes. 98% of the precincts reporting is a very close number, and you can see this race can almost not be even closer than this. So this one is still a toss-up for CBS Evening News. All right, we're starting to see how many Triad counties voted in the presidential race. WFMY News 2's Ben Briscoe is breaking it down.
Well, before we get to the Triad counties, I have to bring you some breaking news here. There's some big changes on the national map. Take a look. The West Coast was just pretty much all called for Joe Biden. We've got Washington State, Oregon, California. He's up to 209 electoral college votes now, compared to 112 for President Donald Trump. We knew that was going to happen, though. Those always go Democrat. What really we're interested in is still this area right here, and we're right in the middle of all of it. That is why I want to take a closer look at our state race here right now. So Chad was just talking about 98% of precincts are in. I want to look at some of the places where we're still waiting. Just within the last few minutes, 100% of Wake County came in. We knew that would be a big Democratic stronghold. It's changed the numbers a little, not a whole lot though. We also see Guilford County, still 76% of precincts are in. Still a big chunk of ours are out. Those could make a difference, but will they be enough? Right now, President Donald Trump, I'm going to do some quick math here, is leading Joe Biden by about 65,000 votes at the moment. Here's the other thing you need to remember. Even after all those precincts come in, there's one more number here that you're going to have to pay attention to. It's 117,000 possible remaining absentee ballots still out there. So 60-something thousand lead still falls within that. It is possible, if all of those people mailed in their ballots today and they get here by November 12th, that the race could change. That is why we might have to end up waiting tonight. That would be a worst case scenario in the election board's mind. They're going to keep counting every single ballot, and then they're also going to check to see if any of these people actually happen to vote today. We'll keep you updated about what they find.
Thank you, Ben. Now we move to North Carolina's U.S. Senate race. Republican incumbent Thom Tillis against Democratic challenger Cal Cunningham. Right now, 49% going to Tillis, 47% going to Cal Cunningham.
Yeah, this is the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. More than $280 million spent between the two campaigns. Every state, as you know, gets just 2 Senate seats. Tonight's winner will join Republican Richard Burr in the Senate chamber in Washington. Their term will last 6 years.
Our team is live at both of the Senate candidates' election night watch parties. WFMY News 2's Jess Winters joins us live now in Mooresville, where Tom Tillis is watching the results come in.
Hey, Julie, Chad, I was just alerted about 20 seconds ago that U.S. Senator Tom Tillis just arrived at his election night watch party. It's been going on since 7:30 this evening. He has a lot of supporters here, of course. They're keeping within those capacities, so about 100 people are here. And again, Senator Tillis just arrived at this very moment. He's expected to make a speech in the next couple of minutes. And right now he does have the lead with about 98% of precincts reporting. But I do want to give you an interview I spoke with his campaign, and they are very optimistic about tonight. Tillis has said all along that he's expecting to make a victory speech. So take a listen.
Well, there's still a lot of votes left out there. We're still watching Union County come in, which is a Republican stronghold, so we're watching that eagerly. But we feel good about where we are right now. We're optimistic.
Yeah, from about 7:30 to 9:30ish, his opponent, Cal Cunningham, had a slight lead of 1%, and then all of a sudden Tillis took charge, and he has had a steady lead for the past hour or maybe a little bit more. We're talking about a 2% lead, so this is still a very close race. This is a nail-biter, but like I said, Tillis has expected to make a victory speech, and he told me yesterday that he just wants to get back to work so he can work on the issues in Washington and represent North Carolina in the U.S. Senate. If Tillis does start speaking within the next couple of minutes, we'll be sure to bring that to you live.
Jess, thank you so much. Challenger Cal Cunningham is monitoring election results from the state Democratic Party headquarters in Raleigh. That's where we find WFMY News 2's Alma McCarty.
Yes, Julie and Chad, we have not heard from take off my IFB really quickly there, but we have not heard from Cal Cunningham, who is running against Tom Tillis for this seat in this very, very close race yet. But we did speak with him earlier tonight as he campaigned outside of a Guilford County polling place, and at that time he felt very, very eager, excited about the results and his potential to win this seat. He said that North Carolinians needed a change and that he could bring that leadership to Washington. He has continually criticized his opponent, again, Republican Tom Tillis, for his COVID-19 response, as well as not just being a true representative of our state. All eyes, of course, have been on this race. As you have mentioned before, it has been the most expensive in U.S. Senate history in terms of the campaign. But again, with the numbers at this point seem way too close to call, but Tillis did take the lead, I would say, within the last hour and a half or so. The current numbers, unofficial results from the North Carolina State Board of Elections, from what I can tell, 48.7% for Tillis, but 46.9% for Cunningham. We are still, again, waiting to hear remarks from the candidate for this U.S. Senate seat. We will for sure bring you the latest, but for now, live in Raleigh, Alma McCarty, WFMY News 2.
Oh, thank you. The biggest local election on the ballot tonight, the race for highest office in North Carolina, the governor. Here's a look at the results. You just heard from Governor Roy Cooper earlier. 52% of the vote was enough for him to declare victory. 98% of precincts are reporting.
Governor Roy Cooper is in Raleigh tonight. You heard him earlier giving his victory speech. WFMY News 2's Kevin Kennedy joins us live now in Raleigh with the latest.
Yeah, Governor Cooper spoke about 10:50, just about maybe 10-15 minutes ago. He brought out his family, his wife, Kristen, and his daughters to go ahead and address the media. That's all that's out here right now. He thanked the people of North Carolina for putting him back in office for 4 more years. He called it an honor and a privilege to serve this state, saying that he was grateful and humbled. He then talked about touring the state and meeting the people, calling North Carolinians tough and resilient. He talked about the job ahead and that it's really now time for all of us to kind of come together as a state and start that healing process and really focus on what is common to all of us: health care, schools, public education, clean air and water. Just a short time ago, as we mentioned, the governor spoke. Here's what he had to say.
To the people of North Carolina, thank you so much for electing me as your governor for another 4 years. Serving in this office has been the honor of my life.
Governor Cooper said that North Carolinians had their voices heard and that the time now is to come to start listening, and listening is an ongoing situation. He then basically thanked everyone for electing him in office for another 4 years. That's the very latest here in Raleigh. I'm Kevin Kennedy, WFMY News 2.
Kevin, thank you. On the other side of the governor's race, Republican Dan Forest. He served as lieutenant governor since 2013.
We have a crew at Forest Election Party in Selma, North Carolina. Let's go to WFMY News 2's Maddie Gardner, who is outside the watch party.
Julie, Chad, we actually just got to go inside that watch party, and we heard from Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest for the very first time this evening, where he stood up on stage in front of the supporters who have remained here tonight and said this is not the outcome we planned for or the one we wanted, but it is the one we got. He says he attempted to call Governor Cooper to concede the race for governor tonight, but could not get in touch with him. He then added that he is praying for Governor Roy Cooper and his family. He said it really was an uphill battle to win this race. He says that the Cooper campaign outraised his campaign by tens of millions of dollars. And he added that it's an uphill battle because Governor Roy Cooper has been on television for months now talking about the pandemic, and he said it was simply too much for them to overcome. He told supporters that he appreciated their support and he appreciated the support of his family and his campaign staff. He actually didn't plan for a speech that was not a victory speech tonight. He very much planned to stand up on stage and accept the role as governor of North Carolina for the next few years, but that was not the case tonight. The speech only lasted about 10 minutes, and then he quickly exited the stage with his family and his supporters, and now you can see more people who are inside of this event tonight are starting to exit. We know that he was hoping to win that office and reopen the state of North Carolina, the economy, our schools. That is something he has been campaigning on for the past 7 or 8 months now, saying that Governor Cooper really let our state down when it came to the response to the coronavirus pandemic. Once again, he says he attempted to call to concede the race tonight, but he could not get in touch with the governor this evening.
Maddie, thank you. We now move to the other chamber at the U.S. Capitol, the House of Representatives. District 6 in our state makes up a portion of Guilford and Forsyth counties. Republican Mark Walker did not run for re-election after redistricting in our state last year. Democrat Kathy Manning, she is the winner with 62% of the vote. Manning lives in Greensboro. You may remember she last ran for U.S. House in 2018. She lost the District 13 race to Republican Ted Budd.
Let's go live now to WFMY News 2's Tahisha Moyes. Tahisha, Kathy Manning has declared victory tonight. Her campaign decided to host a virtual event, however.
Yes, and overall that was a theme of her campaign. Over the last few months, she held in total more than 240 Zoom events. And tonight over Zoom, she said that she is grateful for the support she's received so far, and she is ready to work on behalf of the folks of District 6 and for people across the country. Now, she said the country is facing multiple crises with the pandemic, systemic racism, and climate change, all things she'll work to address, among others.
I am determined to fight for the things that motivated me to run for office, for health care and prescription drugs that are affordable and accessible to everyone, for investment in our schools and our teachers so that all of our kids can get the world-class education they need to prepare them for the jobs of the future.
Manning says that the country is too divided right now, and we all need to find ways to treat each other with respect and to work together to build a better future. Now, as for Manning's Republican challenger, Lee Haywood, he said he's not happy with tonight's results, but he wishes both Manning and the people of District 6 well. He says this race was about people and not candidates. He said this was going to be a hard race to win, but he has no regrets and says he left it all out there on the field.
Tahisha, thank you. Here's a look at some of the other key U.S. House races in our area. In District 13, Republican Ted Budd aims to keep his seat, and it looks as though he will do it. The Rural Hall native is ahead 68% with 100% of precincts reporting.
Now to District number 10. Incumbent Patrick McHenry has held the seat. He looks like he will be keeping his seat again with 69% of the vote.
Someone else keeping their seat tonight. In District 5, Republican incumbent Virginia Fox has declared victory. She's also been in office since 2005, and she will get another term, winning handily 67%, 100% of the precincts reporting.
And earlier tonight, we heard from Representative Ted Budd about tonight's race.
A lot of this is broadband and economic development. We want to make sure, of course, our country as a whole recovers from the pandemic that we've been in. But the area specifically, we want to make sure that they have strong broadband, which has really been brought home because of so many people having to educate from home, having to work from home, and some of the more rural areas struggle with that across the district.
Now let's bring in our Ben Briscoe for some more insight. Now, Ben, you're saying the Piedmont Triad voters, they're really having a say in Election Day.
Yeah, right now, all eyes are on the Triad, not just here in North Carolina, but across the country. This is what people are watching right now to see which way North Carolina is going to go. And I'll show you why. Every major city at this point across the state has their votes in, except for right here in Guilford County. We have 76% of precincts reporting. Now, Joe Biden thought that Guilford was a stronghold spot for him. So we're trying to find out if he can have enough votes to overcome his gap right now behind President Donald Trump. He thought that this was such a stronghold that across the entire state today, he gave one media interview, and that was to me right here in Guilford County for you. He wanted you in Guilford County to come out to vote. So as we wait to see if you did, that's what all the nation is waiting on before they call North Carolina. And it is important to note that that has not ticked up in a while. So we have some crews over at Guilford County, and I hope that you guys can send to them soon to find out what's going on out there.
Ben, thank you. You voted for much more than president, governor, Senate, and the House. There are county commission races, Board of Education races, and more.
Let's take a look at some of the results in Guilford County. First, the ballot item without candidates that has a major impact on local schools and tax dollars. Right now, 73% of voters say yes to the Guilford County Schools bond referendum. 58% of the precincts are reporting there. Now, it would issue up to $300 million in bonds for repairing and replacing school facilities. The next race, very similar to this one, but it is a 1/4-cent sales tax increase for Guilford County. Right now, 67% of voters are against that sales tax increase, and 58% of the precincts are reporting. This is the item GCS hopes to use to pay for the school facility upgrades.
Next, a string of races for seats on the Guilford County Commission. In District 4, it is Republican incumbent Alan Branson versus Mary Beth Murphy. Look at this one, way too close to call. Each of the candidate getting 50% of the vote with 76% of the precincts reporting. Now let's go on to District 5, where Democrat Carly Cook is in the lead right now with 57% of the vote over Troy Lawson. Now to District number 6, Democrat James Upchurch is ahead with 54% over Jim Davis with 46% of the vote. Let's give you a little bit more insight here. Upchurch is a High Point native, a graduate of Southwest Guilford High School. Now to District number 8, it's Democrat incumbent Skip Alston, and he's keeping his seat on the commission 100% because he ran unopposed.
Now to the Guilford County Board of Education. A lot of unopposed races here as well. In District 1, Democrat Diane Bellamy Small keeps her seat. She first joined the board in 2016. In District 3, Republican incumbent Pat Tillman leads, with a very small margin, 50% over Blake Odom, who also has 50%. 82% of the precincts are reporting in this race. Now to District 5, Deborah Napper leads also a very close margin, 51% over Michelle Bardsley, 87% precincts reporting there. Napper is an independent. She is not affiliated with a political party. Now moving on to District 7, Democrat Betty Jenkins joins the board, taking Byron Gladden's seat after she won the March primary. Jenkins previously lost to Gladden in the 2016 election.
Lastly, the Guilford County Register of Deeds Democratic incumbent Jeff Thigpen has a sizable margin with 70% of the vote. Let's go now to Guilford County, where they're still tabulating the results, and that is where we find WFMY News 2's Adoria Chumba.
That's right. This is counting central for Guilford County Board of Elections. As you can see behind me, the machine is quiet now because we've just got some of the last precincts in. Right now, 160 of the 165 precincts are reporting, and it looks like the school bond referendum has passed based on the numbers that we see on the board, while voters have turned down the 0.25% sales tax increase. Now, of course, the results took a little longer to come in, as one polling location stayed open due to an issue earlier today. Now, across the country, many polling places did not see long lines, rather a steady flow of people.
Well, it was just different. You know, we had by mail, we had early voting, but we still had this huge election day. Where today was a big election day, but it wasn't huge compared to what we've seen in previous presidentials.
And several voters supported the school bond referendum, as I mentioned, which is for $300 million, but not the 0.25% sales tax increase, which would have brought nearly $20 million for the schools.
I voted for the bond. I did not vote for the taxes, simply because I just don't feel we need a tax increase.
A lot of people are selfish and they're like, oh, well, I don't want my taxes to be raised, but it's for a good cause, for the schools. If you don't want to invest in the future of America, you know, you're going to get more dropouts.
Again, things have moved pretty quickly here on this election day compared to previous ones. Of course, we had the early voting and mail-in ballots coming in that moved things fast here. Again, just a reminder, as we mentioned, the school bond has passed, but the sales tax hike did not.
Adoria, thank you. Let's run through some of the other results from our area in the State House, the Guilford County area specifically. Republican incumbent John Hardister in District 59, leading Democrat Nicole Quick, 52% of the vote, 88% reporting here. Hardister has held his seat since 2013. Quick lives in Guilford County. She hasn't held any prior public office. Now moving on to District 60, Democratic incumbent Cecil Brockman is leading in this race, 64% over Frank Ragsdale, 96% precincts reporting here.
Now to district number 57, Democrat incumbent Ashton Clemens with a sizable lead with 68% of the vote. Clemens first took office in 2019. In District 58, Democratic incumbent Amos Quick with a very large lead, 76% of the vote. He has held his seat since 2017. District 61 now, Democratic incumbent Pricey Harrison keeping her seat, 100% of the vote, because she ran unopposed.
In District 62, former Greensboro Police Chief John Faircloth winning another term here very easily over Brandon Gray, 57% with 97% of the precincts reporting. He served in the House since 2011. He shifted districts in 2019 because of redistricting. Now to a look at the other chamber in the North Carolina State Legislature, the Senate. These are some of the results for the seats representing Guilford County. In District 24, Amy Gailey with 53% of the vote over J.D. Wooten, 100% of the precincts reporting here. Wooten is a former Air Force officer and engineer with a law degree from Wake Forest. Gailey has been serving as the chair of the Alamance County Board of Commissioners since 2017. She grew up in Union Ridge. Now into District 26, Democrat Jane Gant leads Republican Dave Craven Dave Craven leads Jane Gant 70% of the vote, 97% of the precincts reporting here. Craven took office just a couple months ago. Governor Cooper appointed him to the District 26 seat in July after Republican Jerry Tillman resigned. Gant hasn't held any prior public office.
Now to District 27. Democrat Michael Garrett is in the lead with 54% of the vote. Garrett took office in 2019, beating Republican Trudy Wade. King hasn't held prior public office, but he has worked as an advisor for John Hardister. He's also a Guilford County Schools graduate. Next to District 28, Democrat incumbent Gladys Robinson. She is the winner. The Bennett College and North Carolina A&T grad has held her seat since 2011.
Senate Leader Phil Berger is also up for re-election. The Republican faced Democrat Wally White for District 30, but he will also be keeping his seat with 69% of the vote.
A couple of important state Senate races in Forsyth County as well. First, District 31. Republican incumbent Joyce Krovic is behind Democratic challenger Terry LeGrand. LeGrand previously ran for NC State House District 74 in 2018. She lost to Republican Deborah Conrad. Now to District 32, Democrat incumbent Paul Lowe will be keeping his seat with 59% of the vote.
An important state house race in Forsyth County is District 74. The winner replaces Deborah Conrad. The Republican resigned back in July. She had served since 2013. And tonight, Jeff Zenger, the Republican, with 51% of the vote over Dan Bessie, who has 49% of the vote. Bessie is a former Winston-Salem City Council member. He's represented the Southwest Ward since 2001. Republican Jeff Zenger is a small business owner. He hasn't held any prior public office. Several other local races in Forsyth County tonight, including the race for Winston-Salem mayor. Alan Joines has led the city since 2001, and if you take a look at the results we've been watching closely tonight, boy, did he has a commanding lead over his challenger. He has 72% of the vote. Chris McCann, 28%. Nearly all precincts are reporting in this one.
Let's run through the races for Winston-Salem City Council. Many are unopposed. First, the East Ward. Annette Scipio keeps her seat. She ran unopposed. Denise Adams also running unopposed this year. She's representing the North Ward since 2009 and will stay on for another 4 years. Now on to the Northeast Ward. Democrat Barbara Burke ran unopposed. She's a newcomer to the City Council. She spent the last 2 years on the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board.
The Northwest Ward, Jeff McIntosh gets another 4 years after running unopposed. In the South Ward, John Larson keeps his seat running unopposed. And the Southeast Ward, Democratic incumbent James Taylor faced Libertarian challenger Wesley Longsdorf. Taylor leads this race by a very big margin, 84% to 15%. In the Southwest Ward, Kevin Mundy ran unopposed. He takes over Dan Bessie's spot on council. Finally, the West Ward, Robert Clark ran unopposed. He's the sole Republican on the council, and he has served since 2001.
There are 3 seats up for grabs on the Forsyth County Commission. All 3 incumbents are Republicans. All are leading the race for re-election. They've all been on the commission for at least 20 years. Linville since 1980, Plyler since 1995, and Wisenhunt since 1998.
All right, let's go live to Winston-Salem tonight, where WFMY News 2's Marissa Tansino has the latest from Forsyth County.
Well, things have certainly slowed down here. The height of the action was between 8 o'clock and 9:30, where just behind me here, chief judges were returning their ballot boxes and their vote tallies, which at this point in Forsyth County, all 101 precincts are reporting. So let's take a look at some of that video that we shot earlier. These are the chief judges dropping things off, and right when the polls closed, the early and absentee votes came in first, about 62% of all registered voters, but that's slowly starting to, we saw climbed as more precincts started reporting. So at this point, we are at like I said, 100% of the precincts in Forsyth County have uploaded their tallies to the website. These are the unofficial results, though, so the director of the Board of Elections tells me they're going to be working over the next week and a half to vet, do their research and due diligence, and certify these results.
They do not become official until 10 days after Election Day, which is when what we call canvass. And at canvass, that's when the Board of Elections will meet to go over the audit and reconciliation process, to go over any necessary research that was done.
So again, all 101 precincts, that's 100% of precincts in Forsyth County reporting, and all the supplies and votes back here at the Board of Elections office as of right now.
Marissa, thank you. Now let's head out to Alamance County. There are races for seats on the County Commission and the Board of Education. So here are the results so far. There are 3 seats available on the County Commission. John Paisley, Pamela Thompson, and Bill Lashley all lead the pack. Lashley keeps his seat, Paisley is a newcomer, and Thompson comes over from the Board of Education. There are 4 seats up for grabs on the Alamance-Burlington Board of Education. Sandy Ellington Graves, Ryan Bowden, Patsy Simpson, and Donna Davis. Westbrooks all lead.
WFMY News 2's Grace Holland joins us live in Alamance County after several days of unrest in the area. Grace.
Alamance County Board of Elections officials have gone home for the night. They've counted all the ballots, but it has been a busy day across the county. I want to show you and walk you through some of that. After the polls closed, precinct judges brought results back from 38 precincts here to be counted. But before that, hundreds marched through the streets of Graham and to the polls, a demonstration that came after marchers were arrested during a similar event over the weekend. Tonight, the event ended peacefully, and throughout the day, no lines at many polling places in cities like Burlington and Elon. But I met one healthcare worker who came to vote on her lunch break, and I want you to listen to why she told me voting this election day meant so much to her.
You know, especially with what's going on right now, I'm sorry, I want to get emotional, but there are people who just don't have these rights or, you know, fight really hard to get them. So to me, I'm sorry, it doesn't always feel special.
She told me that she hopes that no matter who you voted for, you remember that we are lucky to be able to choose our elected officials, even if we're still waiting to find out who some of them are.
Grace, thank you. Let's take a look at some of the important North Carolina Council of State races. First, the race for Lieutenant Governor. Greensboro native Mark Robinson. This is a tight one here, but it looks like he is going to be the winner. With 52% of the vote, he's up against Democrat Yvonne Lewis-Hawley.
Some other Council of State races now. The Commissioner of Agriculture, Republican incumbent Steve Troxler, leads with 54% of the vote. Troxler is a Guilford County native. He owns Troxler Farms located in Brown Summit. Next up, State Treasurer, Republican Dale Falwell, leads 53% over Ronnie Chatterjee. You might remember Falwell caught coronavirus back in May, but he has since fully recovered.
This next race determines whose face you'll start seeing in elevators across our state. Sherry Berry announced her retirement as Labor Commissioner last year. Here is a look at the results. Josh Dobson with 51%, Jessica Holmes with 49%. Now to the race for Attorney General. This one is tight, folks. Josh Stein, 50%. With Jim O'Neill also getting 50%. Stein has served since 2016. O'Neill is a Triad native. He's been the Forsyth County District Attorney since 2009. This is the second time he has run for Attorney General. He lost in the primary in 2016.
North Carolina will have a new superintendent of public instruction. Republican Mark Johnson ran for lieutenant governor and lost in the primary. Right now it appears another Republican will replace him, although this one is a very close one. Catherine Truitt with 51% of the vote over Jen Mangrum, 49%. Truitt is the chancellor at Western Governors University in Durham. Mangrum is a former Guilford County Schools teacher who now works as a professor at UNC Greensboro. And one more important race in the Piedmont tonight, a referendum on whether to bring a casino to Danville. And this one passed with an overwhelming majority. 69% of voters up in Danville say, yes, bring a casino. Now let's go live to, this is Senator Tom Tillis, who's speaking in Mooresville.
Before I get done, I want to hug every one of you. But before I get started, I have to thank somebody I fell in love with 34 years ago and married 33 years ago. She's the only reason why I'm here tonight, Susan Tillis. We were back at the house watching the returns, and I've decided a long time ago that I don't have to get nervous because I can outsource it to all my family members, Susan being first among them. I call her my own Carla Rove. But I want to thank you all for being here. I'm sorry it took so much time. We were holding up a little bit to hear from my opponent, But we decided we wanted to come over here and talk to you all, because what we accomplished tonight was a stunning victory. And we did it. We did it against all the odds, right? I mean, have we heard this before? You're down in the polls, there's no chance of winning. And I believed in every single one of you. Every single one of you did it. If you think about the margin of victory tonight, doing our part to save the Senate, it happened because of the individual effort of thousands of people in North Carolina, knocking on doors, making phone calls, getting the message out, letting everybody know that the truth still does matter. Letting everybody know that character still matters. And let everybody know that keeping your promises still matters. That's the most important thing to me since I've been in elected office. When I ran for the legislature in 2006, I promised people that if I went to Raleigh, I would not let you down, I would fulfill your promises. Then we got a majority, and thank goodness tonight I hear that my colleagues in the State House and the State Senate are faring pretty well now as well. Thank God. And I also want to congratulate other statewide offices because we've mounted some victories tonight. Why did we do that? Because we continue to deliver results, because delivering results still matters. And Republicans made promises to the voters of North Carolina, and we have lived up to those promises and exceeded those promises. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you tonight, with 6 more years in the U.S. Senate, I will work tirelessly to make sure that we continue to provide opportunities and continue to fulfill promises and continue to make this nation and this state as great as it can possibly be. I want to tell you all too, I told everybody that I was carrying a heavy burden. Most of the, how many staff do I have here? Folks that have worked with me closely. Yeah. Thank you all for all you do. Do many of y'all recognize me as somebody that's particularly stressful? No. I don't really experience stress, but I did have a heavy burden on me, thinking that North Carolina could be the majority maker for the U.S. Senate. And I told people across this state that they needed to carry that same burden. And in the election today, they proved to me that they were willing to carry that burden all the way to victory tonight. And we need to thank all of them for what they did. You know, I was, some of these ads of my Chief of Staff, Ted Lehman's here, my former Chief of Staff, Ray Starling, are here. They were great leaders in the Senate. A lot of you all worked for them, great people. But I told my staff, and actually Ted Lehman told me that one of his baby girls here standing right up on the front row saw an ad about me at the hotel and said, "What are they talking about?" You know, they were trying to paint me as some guy that only worries about the rich. I don't worry about the rich, ladies and gentlemen. God bless them for being rich. What I worry about are the people that grew up like me. You know, when you grow up in a trailer park, you move I moved 17 times, but 7 times before you're 16 years old. You go to community college and work your way up and get your degree when you're 36. How could anybody forget where they came from? And how could anybody go in elected office and not think every single day about how you make sure those same opportunities are available for people who are growing up like you? That's what drives me. That's what will continue to drive me. My job has always been fighting for everybody to have the same opportunity to realize their American dream. It may not be mine, but whatever they want, I want them to achieve. And I want this country to continue to be that great nation that provides everybody those opportunities. I've done it for as long as I've been in public service, and I'll do it for as long as I'm going to be in public service. Now what we have to do is look ahead. We're going to go back to Washington next week, and we've got to recover from COVID. But now I'm absolutely convinced we're going to have the right numbers to do that. We're going to make sure that we get the vaccine out. We're going to make sure that we kill this virus and what it's done to this great nation. We're also going to make sure that schools can open, that businesses can open, and that everybody can get back to the great environment that we just had back in February. We can do that, and we will do it. But also I have to say tonight, I'm going to go back home tonight, and I'm going to watch the election results, and I am praying that President Donald Trump gets reelected. Is there anybody here, I've asked this of crowds of almost 30,000 in Hickory just a few days ago. Is there anybody here, if you could think of one promise that Donald Trump made that he hasn't kept, raise your hand. Not one. He said he would cut taxes. He said he would cut regulations. He said he would hold China accountable. He said NATO had to pay their fair share. He said, I'm done with Iran having any power. He said that people that kill Americans, like the leader of ISIS in Soleimani, I'm going to take them out. Is any one of those promises still left unkept? No. President Trump and I have probably different styles. But there is no daylight whatsoever between his commitment to the American people and realizing the American dream in me. And tonight, I hope that everybody of every race understands that this president cares about Hispanics, he cares about African Americans, he cares about women. That's why they were employed at historic numbers just back in February. And that's why, when he gets reelected, they're going to be back at that same point in a very short period of time. But tonight, let's pray for this nation. Let's pray that we can heal. Let's pray that we can have a peaceful transition of power. Let's make sure that we're magnanimous in victory, because that's what we should do. And then let's make sure that we go back and every single day be obsessed with making sure that every American has the opportunity that so many of us have had to realize our American dream. Thank you all. God bless you. And thank you all for the great work that you've done.
You just listened to Senator Thom Tillis giving his victory speech over Cal Cunningham, but we do want to note that we are still waiting for the Associated Press to declare a winner in this U.S. Senate race.
Right, but you can see the numbers here. Boy, are they close. 49%. Thom Tillis has over 47% for Cal Cunningham. If you do the math quickly, just under 100,000 votes separate the two. It is important to note that there are about 112,000 absentee ballots out there. So it would mean that Cal Cunningham would have to take the vast majority of those votes to even come close to beating Thom Tillis in this race. So we will keep a close eye on it.
We are also keeping a very close eye on the presidential race. Here are the latest numbers. 50% of the votes going to President Donald Trump, 49% going to former Vice President Joe Biden, with 99% precincts reporting in. This is the votes from North Carolina.
And I believe we're going to be going to WFMY News 2's Megan Malaris, who has a breakdown of how the electoral votes have shaken out so far and which battleground states are still up for grabs, including ours, Megan.
And North Carolina, obviously a key battleground state with 15 electoral votes. And those outstanding absentee ballots you just mentioned, Chad and Julie, could be the reason North Carolina is one of the holdout states in deciding the outcome of the presidential election. Currently, only about 75,000 votes separate the two, with President Donald Trump holding a narrow lead over Joe Biden, but that could change as those absentee ballots come in and are counted over the next several days. Let's look at the overall electoral college map here. North Carolina, a key battleground state. Also Florida, although it's looking like at this point Florida will go Trump, with a majority of its precincts reporting 98%, and President Trump holding a pretty steady 3-point lead as of now. The president also needs to get Wisconsin and Michigan, as he did in 2016. Currently, the AP has them leaning Republican. Pennsylvania could also be a holdout state. Only 52% of the vote is reported there. And remember, Pennsylvania, unlike North Carolina, did not even start counting absentee ballots until tonight. They could not open the envelopes. And so the results from those could give Democrats a lead later on as those absentee ballots are counted. We're also looking at Arizona. Currently, the AP has that leaning Democrat. President Donald Trump won Arizona in 2016. He likely needs to get that again. But we also saw that the president had a victory here in Nebraska. Remember, Nebraska is one of 2 states that is not winner take all, but it looks like the president won 3 of the 5 electoral votes there. Maine is the other state that is not winner take all. But again, this key number is 270. A president needs that number to win the White House. We'll be right back on WFMY News 2 at 11.
Hey, mic check. You just heard a victory speech, so don't mind if I just go over everything he just said. Can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, it's Alma doing a live hit. We have still not heard from Cal Cunningham, who was up against Senator Tillis.
Mic check 3 2 1. Mic check 3 2 1. 3 2 1. 3 2 1. Let me know.
Welcome back to WFMY News 2 at 11. We're taking a look at the Electoral College, which currently, according to the AP, has Joe Biden with a commanding lead over President Donald Trump. But it is still early, and all of these key battleground states that were considered toss-ups, including North Carolina, are not yet official. The map we're seeing right now was pretty much what we expected to see as far as states that traditionally lean Democrat and traditionally lean Republican. But North Carolina, as I explained, could be the holdout with less than 75,000 votes separating the 2 candidates. President Trump has about a 1-point lead thus far, but we know there are more than 100,000 absentee ballots still outstanding, and they have until November 12th to count as long as they were postmarked by 5 o'clock tonight. Pennsylvania could also be another holdout, and Wisconsin and Michigan still too close to call as well. That key number a candidate needs is 270.
Megan, thank you. Turning now to the Senate race here in North Carolina between Tom Tillis and Cal Cunningham. This is a close race. They are still counting ballots, but Senator Tom Tillis has declared victory with 49% of the vote over Cal Cunningham with 47% of the vote.
And we're still waiting for the Associated Press to declare a winner in that race. Our team is live at both candidates' watch parties. WFMY News 2's Jess Winters joins us live now from Mooresville with the latest from the Tom Tillis camp.
Julie, Chad, y'all put it best. U.S. Senator Tom Tillis was the one calling this race, yet we haven't gotten the official results, but his campaign felt that they were confident enough that he could go up on that podium and make that victory speech. And I don't know if y'all heard it because the victory speech did wrap up about 5 minutes ago, but the crowd here was chanting and they were screaming 6 more years. 6 more years. Of course, he will be entering his second term if it is in fact a victory. And in his speech, he covered a lot of bases. He, of course, thanked his wife, and then he talked about next steps, what he's still going to be doing in Washington. He says we have to defeat coronavirus and we have to get a vaccine out to people. But then he said we also need to open up businesses and we need to open schools back up. And he says for the rest of the night, after he's done hugging and taking pictures with folks and all of his supporters here, he says he is going to go home and he's going to pray that Donald Trump is still our president tomorrow morning. And, you know, he thanked his supporters over and over again. He said people at the polls were saying there's no chance of you winning because he was down in the polls. Cunningham was leading, and he proved them wrong tonight. That's what he said in his speech, and this is very reminiscent of 2014 when he won against incumbent Kay Hagan, and, you know, he won by a very narrow margin. This is very similar. It's kind of like deja vu. Back to you guys.
Jess, thank you. On the other side of the ticket now, Cal Cunningham is expected to be at the Democratic Party headquarters at some point tonight. WFMY News 2's Alma McCarty is live there with more. Alma.
Yes, Chad, even though we have heard from several of the Democratic candidates, much of whom have already declared their victories, we have not heard from Cal Cunningham at all. I'm actually unaware if he is actually on the campus here in downtown Raleigh. He is, as you said, expected to come and give remarks at some point. And it is important to point out now that, of course, although Tillis has declared his own victory, the AP hasn't called it, and so the race at this point still too close to call. Initially, Cunningham had the lead. It was a small lead, but as the night progressed and the number of ballots were counted and precincts reported, we saw that the margin was coming closer together, and then obviously Tillis passed him and now has that lead of 49 over 47. We spoke earlier today with Cunningham at a precinct in Guilford County that he stopped at. He's been campaigning quietly over the last 2 weeks. We really hadn't seen where he was until he had already been there, but we caught up with him and he was very optimistic about this race, about the results, about his win tonight, saying that North Carolinians needed to change. Still too close to call at this point, but we will give you more from Raleigh and hopefully some remarks from Cal Cunningham.
Alma, thank you. Let's get a closer look at how the Piedmont Triad voted in the presidential race. WFMY News 2's Ben Briscoe is breaking it down for us.
So first I want to show you why our state has not been called yet, because a lot of people are wondering. If you look at the map, almost all of the precincts are in right now. But this is really important. The AP has this expected vote, how many votes they thought our state would have. We're just at 94% right now. And the reason for that is because of all those absentee ballots still out there. In fact, we could make a big difference as they come in some of these smaller races. It's looking like it will make less and less of a difference in the presidential race at this point, though, because let's take a look at where it stands right now. President Donald Trump has 2,730,000 votes right now in our state. Joe Biden has 2,655,000. I do want to point out when we look at these numbers that all of these third-party candidates right here, if you add them all up, is more than the difference between the two candidates right there. In fact, for write-ins, we had 12,000 people write in a name on their ballot simply because they didn't like any of the choices that were there. One other thing that's really interesting, we talk about the increase in voter turnout. I also want you to think about this. This is North Carolina's population growth. Since The last time a Democrat won in our state for president, 2008, when Barack Obama won, we have grown from 9.8 million all the way up to 10.5 million people projected this year. It looks like all the people who are moving to our state from the numbers are also pretty evenly divided on Republican and Democrat, not really one or the other in majority.
Ben, thank you. Let's continue our election coverage now. We're going to go to the race for lieutenant governor. It's Greensboro native Mark Robinson. It is a tight race as he is up against Democrat Yvonne Lewis Hawley. Right now, here are the numbers. 52%. The projected winner, Mark Robinson, with Yvonne Lewis Hawley at 48%.
Now let's go live to WFMY News 2's Denise McMiller, who is live at Mark Robinson's watch party in High Point.
Yes, I'm here at the Golden Doors Event Center where Mark Robinson is actually celebrating his victory. He says that his opponent, Yvonne Hawley, actually conceded. Mark Robinson, as you said, is a Republican. He's a factory worker who grew up in foster care and is actually a Greensboro native. And this is a historic moment for him because he is the first black lieutenant governor here in the state. It was a tight race. He was up by about 3% according to the state's Board of Election website. And he says that he plans to focus on funding for police and also making sure veterans are taken care of here in the state. And this is an important race because since he's won, he will serve as the president of the state Senate and will be a member of the Governor's Council of State and is one of the states, will be on the State Board of Education. So he has a lot of responsibilities that he's going to be taking on. He says he plans to focus, again, like I said, on education and also focusing on law enforcement, funding law enforcement as well. Again, like I said, he's out here celebrating and speaking to some of those who have been supporting him throughout this campaign.
Hi, Denise, thank you. Remember, you can find the full results of elections all across the Triad and the state on our free app and on our website. Head to WFMYnews2.com and to go race by race. You can really look at any race in our area. Remember, some results may be delayed. We are committed to bringing you the most accurate results.
And some of the highlights for you. Governor Roy Cooper has won re-election for North Carolina, the governor's race. Senator Thom Tillis has declared victory in the race for U.S. Senate against Cal Cunningham, but the Associated Press has not yet declared a winner for that race, so we will keep you informed. And also still too close to call for the presidential race.
I'm gonna refresh the North Carolina State Board of Elections website here because this is what we've been using all night to get the unofficial election results so we know where everything stands. And right now, President Donald Trump is still in the lead with 49.97% of the vote over Joe Biden, who has 48.58% of the vote. So really about 1.5% difference between the two of them. And right now we are still at 99.89% reporting.
It is that close for our 15 electoral votes. Thank you so much for joining us for our extended election coverage. Good night.
WFMY News 2 at 11 is brought to you by Cox Toyota in Burlington. Take a test drive and you could win $1,000. So before